Liberal Currents presents Half the Answer with your hosts, Caitlin M. Green and Trent R. Nelson.
Happy days are here again, and you know that understanding a question is half of an answer, and this is, of course, half the answer. My host, Trent R. Nelson and Caitlin M. Green. You know what we get up to here? Well, I'm a writer and an editor, and I do a whole bunch of stuff, too. History and philosophy, it's a whole bunch of fun. And Caitlin, well, she's a linguist. She's a writer-editor. She's a genius, but only on the backs of others. It's all a community effort. And also, Mom. Thank you, Mom. Caitlin, we've had such wonderful folks on the show recently, and we've been talking so much about the far right, about fascism and far right adjacent folks. Well, Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson, they're in the news. Who are we talking to, and why are we talking about them?
Yeah, so I figured we needed like a proper expert today for this one. And so I got my friend, I hope I can say friend, Daniel Harper from the I Don't Speak German podcast, a podcast I've been a fan of for a super long time. They cover the far right. They talk about all the kind of creepy crawlies under all the rocks. And so if we're doing a rock peeking episode, man, we need Daniel. So Daniel, how are you?
I've been a fan of this show for a while. I've been a fan of yours on, formerly Twitter and now Blue Sky for a long time.
Right.
And I've been listening to this show. And so, I reached out to you and I was like, hey, if you ever need anything, if you ever want me to come on, I'd love to come on. If ever you decide to look under a rock that I'm the one who has the particular set of gloves for. That's what I'm here for. So,
and this is the one.
These are,
here
these
we
are, these are, the thing is that for me, these are not even like the aggressive, I've been in a lot squirmier places than this. This is the shallow pool for me, but it's still pretty.
That's what came up with Amanda, right? That's what came up is like, oh, Nick Fuentes is gross, but like there's levels under him that are even grosser.
There's a whole like paleontological record underneath, like Nick
right.
Fuentes.
Right.
We'll get into some of that maybe today because there are lots of references to far right people that just get completely unremarked upon in this conversation.
That's what I really wanted you here for, is to kind of catch those things that, a mainstream journalist isn't always going to know. And so when they're like, oh, yeah, well, like the conversation went this way, it's like, yeah, sure. Like that's the surface. That's the vibes, right? Tucker Carlson was friendly. It was kind of a softball interview, like true. But I think you have more of a sense of the social sphere that these guys are in. You have more of an ear for those references. And so that's what we're here for.
No worries. No, I'm here for it.
It's going to be a good time.
We're good. All right.
So let's start, I think, with like a basic bio of these two guys. Like, who is Nick Fuentes? Who is Tucker Carlson?
Sure. Well, Tucker Carlson has been in the media for, basically since he was in his 20s. He started on CNN, I believe. I don't know. I don't have like a potted history of Tucker Carlson, but
I believe that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, he actually reportedly lied his way onto camera the first time because some producer was going and asking for, I couldn't find the exact reference, but they were looking for an expert in such and such thing, and Tucker goes, well, I know all about that. And he gets on his first, he's like, I knew nothing about it. I just showed up and bullshitted for 10 minutes, and now he has a career, So
honestly, like truly the poster boy for like white mediocrity, but just like have a little confidence and you're good.
Yeah. He famously was on Crossfire back in the 90s. That's when I first started watching him. But the original version of Crossfire, before it became the Jon Stewart crushed version of Crossfire. Right. That's one of the greatest moments in TV history is Jon Stewart going, "You are hurting the world."
Right. Stop. Actually, okay. I have a really embarrassing story about this, actually, because I was in high school when that happened. And in my French class, we had to write an essay about someone we admired. And I wrote about Jon Stewart, and I like summarized and translated the stuff that he said on Crossfire to Tucker Carlson into French. And so I was like, je ne suis pas ton sang, je ne vais pas danser pour toi. Like,
nice. I love it. Yeah, so you and I have been on similar beats all our lives is what I'm hearing. So But he eventually, and in that era, he was very like mainstream Republican, pro Bush, pro Iraq War,
Yeah.
very very kind of mainstream.
Pro bow
As
tie.
time went on, yeah, yeah, he had the bow tie for so many years. Now it's more like a Leatherman aesthetic.
It's
He sits
just
at his
it's
he
just
wants
like
to.
an open collar. It's no
It's,
good.
it's like what I'm cost Ron Swanson is sort of where he lands now.
Right.
I have a house shed full of tools that have never seen a single day of use.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The underside of his truck is clean as a whistle.
Uh, never been driven off road a moment in its
No.
Never.
but yeah, no, he eventually makes the move to Fox News. He becomes more, he gets his own show. It's one of the biggest shows on Fox News for 10 years until he started getting a little more openly anti-Semitic, and then they shit-canned him. It's kind of the big picture story. And now he's independent and kind of just more a conspiracy theorist than anything. That's what I listen to his podcast. I don't listen to every episode, but I listen to quite a few of them, and it's just it's full of conspiracies. We're going to get into that a little bit in this episode because it comes up over and over and over again in this conversation as well.
Honestly.
Fuentes is currently, I believe he's probably 28 now. Yeah, he was, something like that, 27, 28. He started off. There's another Nazi once said, and I believe this. That boy was born to host a talk show. I imagine him like coming out of the womb, talking, like having listened to Rush Limbaugh during in utero and just like coming out of the womb with with that attitude. I mean, if there was anybody born to speak into a microphone, it's Nick Fuentes. I say that like content neutral. I'm just saying like he is born to do this. He will be doing this till the day he dies.
Yeah,
and
he
he's
certainly
terrible.
does it enough hours of his life. Like
Oh no,
he's
absolutely.
constantly.
He was doing in his high school. He was doing like student productions. He was on their talk show back in the day. He was 17, 18. He was this young Republican who really was being groomed to be in these media spotlights. And then the way he tells it is, I just started asking questions about Israel, and suddenly, well, I'm America first. They just couldn't deal with that. They couldn't deal with my mild criticisms. And it's like, no, you went Nazi really early.
Yeah.
Right.
He attended Unite the Right. That's something that you will not hear him say very often about himself. He got banned from a lot of social media platforms, including Twitter, although now he's back on Twitter. He got banned from YouTube early enough that then he starts his own thing, cozy.tv, which is his own platform. And then he has this Groyper army is kind of the thing that he's kind of known for. And I originally found out about him. He was doing this, and I revealed this on Honest Speak German like years ago, back when I covered him alongside his ex co-host on this show called Nationalist Review, and I covered them together because I thought like they had such a strong falling out over completely immature nonsense. They were both in their like early 20s. I mean, I think Fuentes was like 18, 19, and also was 22 at the time. But they hated each other so much. I thought, I'm going to do one episode about these guys. I'm going to do them together, and they're going to, if they ever listen to it, they'll hate the fact that I did them together. And Alsip sank without a trace. I thought Alsip was the talented one of the two. No, Fuentes was the real deal. Somehow he always looks like a small child and a 60-year-old man at the same time.
Dude,
he just
Unbelievable.
Listen, we do not live in a meritocracy. We know this, and
No,
so
we
here
do
we
not.
are. The wrong kid died. Like we got the wrong far right
Yes.
kid.
But yeah, so and now he's angling his way into the mainstream as he has pushed the Overton window further and further right. He has become more and more a product of he has become more and more acceptable. And I think that
Yeah.
really my big picture kind of like what Tucker is trying to do is he's trying to test out Nick Fuentes as the replacement for Charlie Kirk. That's kind of where we land. Everybody's looking for the new guy who can like unite the party in the same way that Charlie Kirk could.
Right.
I don't think it's Fuentes, but the idea that Tucker is even like doing this is kind of astonishing to me. But
yes.
So we decided to talk.
You're not alone in that either, right? So like the New York Times and the Atlantic had articles about this interview where they suggested that like this is kind of a test run to see if Nick Fuentes can be the new Charlie Kirk. And I think a lot of people on the right would love to think that that's not possible, that like an outright white supremacist could take over, because they like to think they have like kind of a firewall for that kind of thing. And it's like a comforting myth that they tell themselves. I think that they're like, oh, well, we have
Absolutely.
ways of stopping, like really freaky people from taking control of our movement. And it's like, no, you really do not. You do not have that ability.
But even if they did, they don't use them. They're completely inactionable. They don't stand up to. In fact, I think it's quite noticeable that it's the opposite way. I mean, when push comes to shove, and they say that they're going to break into the Capitol building, a lot of these people have years later like reneged on being like, this was a bad deal. This was insurrection. Many of them have reneged and now say like, nah, like it was just protesters, and it was the FBI, and it was a scam, it was a conspiracy. And so, yeah, I don't see that. It's just, again, it's the hope. It's the hope that we're not a Nazi den, but maybe not even
Right.
hope. Maybe it's just like this proclamation that makes us feel better.
Yeah. Well, I thought the New York Times article about it was interesting because they talk about William F. Buckley Jr. about an example of like a right winger who like wouldn't let like really freaky stuff get into the National Review and stuff. And it's like, I mean, kind of, but then then it sort of didn't really materialize, right? Where he was like, well, the John Birch Society is not welcome in the National Review. And so that's like one of their foundational sort of like lodestones for here's our story of what we do. We do like William F. Buckley Jr.
Yeah, no, I think honestly, even like kind of thinking that Fuentes is, that Fuentes can kind of like sneak his way in there to kind of be the snake in the grass. It also belittles just how extreme Charlie Kirk was at many times. I mean, after his death. I mean, it's something that we talked about on I don't speak German, but it's pretty clear that you didn't have to look far to find like really nasty stuff that Charlie Kirk had said. Particularly,
yeah, actually, Nick Fuentes and Charlie Kirk had a lot in common, including how extreme they were, also including how kind of prone they were to being chameleons, where like they would say one thing to one audience and something else to another audience in order to maintain popularity with like a diversity of audiences.
Well,
they both were great at that.
And their closeness to Donald Trump. Obviously, Trump talks about Kirk still, but people forget that he had supper with Kanye West and Nick Fuentes as well. So to say that
Fuentes recounts that dinner in the Tucker interview. Fascinatingly,
yeah.
I don't believe a word of it, but he recounts it. So yeah.
Wait, you don't think all those compliments that Nick says that Trump gave him were legitimately delivered?
I believe the ones that Fuentes said to Trump. I don't believe the ones that Trump said to Fuentes.
Oh, I believe he put Trump's entire boot in his mouth, but
yes, I was gonna be more graphic. I was gonna be more graphic than that, but yes, completely.
Oh dear. This is a family podcast.
Okay, fair enough.
This is not a family podcast. You can swear.
We had the whole cuck episode. We cannot claim.
Yeah, we mark every episode explicit for a reason. It's fine,
Right. It has to be. Dude, I can't even promote this show on TikTok or like YouTube shorts or whatever. It's just like, what do you think you're doing right now? We're not showing this to people.
I mean, when my podcast is like built around like playing clips of literal Nazis, you reach a ceiling pretty fast.
Yeah. There's like only so much you can do. So I'm trying. I'm really trying. I mostly just put clips of like myself ditzing out because that's like pretty unobjectionable.
Sure.
Or me ranting.
You ranting, right? Because, well, except for the last one was put under review for a while because you said Hitler's name. And TikTok was like, I don't know about this.
Classic.
Don't worry, it made it through. As our social media manager, I'm like constantly fighting. So let's get into this interview. So like this Tucker Carlson has this series that it's just like an online show now where he interviews somebody. He's a podcaster. He's a glorified podcaster. He's like, no, it's a talk show. That's what a lot of podcasts are. That's what we're doing.
Same here, buddy. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Tucker Carlson and I have the same job. And
I'd like his ad revenue, but you know.
Right.
I know, truly. It happened basically because he can't be on Fox anymore because of like the Dominion scandal, right? He was named in the lawsuit for Dominion as one of the people spreading false information about the voting machines.
Right.
And then he also I think was exposed for texting about how he actually knew that it was a lie and how much that was going to be really sucky later. And guess what? It really was. He was like, we're tanking our credibility, you know, like we're like clearly lying on camera. And then like that all got subpoenaed and they're like, oh, you say here you were lying on camera about us, a company whose reputation suffered as a result. How interesting, how actionable.
Yes.
So he's got this thing. It's like the classic podcast setup, right? It's like, it's dark, it's moody. I mean, like, look at me. I'm like riffing on the situation. They've got their like wooden table and their like earthy, woodeny kind of like setup and their expensive microphones.
It reminds me a bit of the Brett and Heather weird wooden room that they had for a long time.
Same. Where they were doing their podcast in the sauna. This was the Dark Horse podcast.
Yes.
Right. Yes. Which is the one where these like canceled academics would talk all about all of the like heterodox thinking that's not being celebrated enough by the mainstream. And then they like took ivermectin live on the podcast. So like they became like really hardcore COVID cranks.
Oh yeah, they were about as hardcore as you can get. They were that's crazy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I haven't looked into them in a long time. Anyway,
I wonder how they're doing.
I looked into what Heather was saying about the Dobbs decision, and that was the last time I looked in, and that was not fun. Maybe we'll do an episode on that one of these days.
I'm sure she was perfectly reasonable about Dobbs. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, no. It's like, well, yeah, we're not gonna have abortions anymore, but like, we also want to have trans people, so I guess that's okay. That's kind of where she is. Yeah.
You know, bodily autonomy going out the window. It's got pluses and minuses, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So cool. Okay, so they're sitting down. It's just like, hey, buddy, how are you? And it's like super jovial, really cute. I hope that they get drinks together later. And basically Tucker Carlson opens by saying like, well, listen, like Nick Fuentes is not going away. And so we might as well just like find out what he thinks and put it out into the open, which to me is so silly because like I said, he is a known chameleon. This is like his thing, right? You sit him down, it depends what room he's in and who he thinks his audience is, what he's going to say. So you're not solving anything by being like, okay, Nick, like tell my mainstream MAGA audience what you're like. And then he's just going to sit there and be like, I am so reasonable. Like all of my anti-Semitism is based in very reasonable stuff.
This is, I mean, you know, to my mind, this is very deliberately an attempt to whitewash him. I mean, this is not, I mean, you know, this is, I don't take this seriously in terms of like Tucker really wants to get at the heart of this. I mean, Tucker realizes that Nick Fuentes might be the future and he wants to get on that bandwagon. That's the long and the short of it. I mean, I don't know. I'm used to dealing with like the little guys who will mostly just say what they think, you know. As opposed to like these big corporate actors where you're like, no, this is like a pose for you. You're like triangulating. And that's honestly, definitely where I think Tucker is. I mean, Tucker just doesn't. To my mind, he does no ounce of sincerity in his bones. He does this little puppy dog voice. You know, he's got this little almost like hangdog, like hurt expression. Like he's always about 30 seconds away from starting to cry. And it's all affect. I mean, like, dude, I remember when you were chortling about like dead Iraqis in 2003. Like, don't give me that shit, you know?
Yeah.
Some of us were not born yesterday.
2003.
He does.
He mentions 2003 to make himself look good too, right? Where he's like, well, you know, I've been talking about this for a long time.
Yeah, and he's like,
Okay.
well, I was back one of them back in the day, and now I'm not. Now I'm more authentic because back then I was just promoting the company line, and now I'm clearly not just doing that.
Right. I'm a free agent, baby.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can do what I want, and what I really want is to whitewash Nick Fuentes. That's
Right.
I mean, that is weird as hell, dude. I don't think that's a great idea. And the fact that they feel like Fuentes is the future in this way is sort of the successor to Charlie Kirk. It's kind of this understanding that they need to figure out how to have the young right wing
right.
stay with them as opposed to
Yeah.
like forming their own thing, running away from them. And probably Israel is a big inflection point for that, right?
Oh yeah. I
Like
mean,
this
well,
is this is part of why.
the atrocities that are taking place in Gaza are absolutely. I mean, it's
Yeah.
God, this is a complicated. I mean, it's a complicated thing to say on my own podcast where I have a little bit more editing room, but certainly the crimes of the city of Israel have made this kind of open anti-Semitism much more viable among certain people. I think you can despise the crimes of this war and still think that like Jewish people are perfectly fine and just like people like everybody else. That is not a
Right.
complicated thing for me. But again, I'm not a vicious anti-Semite, and certainly
Well,
Fuentes
right.
is. And
Yeah.
Tucker is
So
certainly leaning in that direction. I mean, he
yeah, so what we have here is essentially a guy who is willing to say that it is actually fundamental to like Jewish culture to think that Zionism is awesome and that you should actually get to do genocides versus a guy who's like, but not like all Jews, right? Like that's where we're at.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and there are even finer distinctions there because it's like, well, it's not genetic, it's cultural, it's religious, it's part of this
Right.
verse. So there's like Jews are Jewish in this like horrible like vermin sense. In these communities, it's either genetic, in which case the only answer is extermination. Those are your Nazis,
Right.
and then it's
Yeah.
it's cultural, and so maybe there are some good ones, but they have to be not Jews anymore, or
Right.
or something that's a little bit more like well, there are some good ones here and there, and I mean Fuentes is very much on the like some of my best friends are Jews, but they shouldn't have power, they shouldn't act Jewishly, whereas
Right.
Tucker's a little bit more like yeah, but like Mike Huckabee was also a neocon, he's not Jewish, and it's like I mean, and this like playing around with this, it only feeds the most extreme version of this because the most extreme version of it, the kinds that I usually cover on my podcast, they're just going to look right through this and go like they're just lying about how terrible Jews are. That's the only thing they're gonna come away with this is. But this tiptoeing around it is just. I mean, they're playing with fire, and obviously, for any Jewish person listening to me and who doesn't understand what I do, I am very much not in agreement with these guys, and if I sound a little bit harsh there, I'm trying to, establish just how terrible these people can be in their own spaces. I have I have examined some of the worst anti-Semitism that is possible to examine without actually being Jewish, but in any case, sorry. So hopefully that was clear.
Okay, so one of the things that that I kind of was interested in because I read about the video before I watched the video. And so a lot of people were like, oh, well, Carlson tried to like really push back against the anti-Semitism. And I was like, wow, congrats to him. Like I would love to see examples of that. And then I watched it and it was like the most ineffectual version of that I've ever seen in my life. And so what I would love to do is to share a little clip of this like ostensible pushing back.
On some level, we do need to be exclusive, not inclusive. We do need to be right wing. We do need to be Christian. We do, on some level, need to be pro-white, not to the exclusion of everybody else, but recognizing that white people have a special heritage here.
But I also think there is like a true, not just principle, but like spiritual reality that we have to defend, which is God created every person as an individual, not as a group. No woman gave birth to a community. Like we hate that kind of thinking, right? Collectivist thinking like that. That's identity politics. That's what Dave Rubin engages in. That's why Dave is like just a child. Like you don't pay any attention to Dave because he's like shallow. But we're not going to be that, right? Or no?
No, I completely agree with you. And, and not to be that guy and say that thing, but like my best friend is a Jewish person.
No,
you know,
I
so
know,
like, but here's my, I guess here's my substantive disagreement, because as a Catholic, I could not agree more with you
Yes.
in what you're saying. I love all people, even the ones that don't like us. We have to love them all, and we have to recognize that
We're required to.
yes, and especially Aquinas says the Jews are a witness people, and so they actually have special protections under the law according to Catholic philosophy. But I guess my substantive disagreement, which I've said on the show also, is the idea that neoconservatism and Israel has nothing to do with Jewishness, Jewish identity, the Jewish religion, because clearly the state of Israel and the neocons are deeply motivated by that ethnic identity, and their allegiance to Israel proceeds from that. You know, the plan of Greater Israel, the blood and soil nationalism of Israel, it stems from this ethno-religion, which is Judaism.
Well, this is, just BLM, the new version. This is identity politics. They're engaging in identity politics. I mean, that's just so obvious to me. But the problem in your response, I get what you're saying, but the problem in your response is it does not apply to every individual.
No, and I would never say that.
Okay. Well, I just think it's important to say that, not to kind of like dodge the accusations against you. My best friends are Jewish. Like, okay, I agree. Embarrassing, even though it's probably true. And it's true in my case, actually. But whatever. But because just that principle that we're all judged as individuals by what we do, that our faith, the decisions that we make, the way we live our lives, and God will judge every one of us in that way. And that's how we're supposed to judge. Like, I think that's true.
Yeah, and I totally agree. But I guess the disagreement is you say identity politics like it's a bad thing. I think identity is reality.
Identity is reality. Absolutely. You just can't have a country of 350 million this diverse where it's just like warring ethnicities, because then it's Rwanda soon. And, the people with the most force just kill the others. So like, you can't have that here. Right?
Yeah. But I would say specifically as it pertains to, you, I think, have said it's the neocons.
There's a lot going on there, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a whole, and I clipped part of that. That was part of what I was sharing with you, Caitlin, just to let you know.
Good. Yeah, because you were talking about Rise of the Neocons, right? So there's this whole conversation about identity politics, meaning that you always blame the group for anything bad, right, that happens associated with that community. And that's kind of how Tucker Carlson views identity politics. And then Nick Fuentes is like, yeah, but I would kind of like to be able to do that, please.
Well, Tucker's very much coming from this kind of like little old school, like, small business republicanism, where we all just stand on our own 2 feet. He's crouching in these very Christian terms, in terms of, well, we're all saved individually. We're not saved, as a group. It's not, but Fuentes is going, well, but no, identity is real. Identity is something that, well, clearly the Jews just believe certain things, so they act in certain ways, and we need to treat that seriously in our politics. He's not saying that many words. I mean, to me, Tucker is saying this is largely drivel. I mean, it's amazing that like everybody watches this who is not, doing it for the reasons that we are doing it. I can't imagine anyone thinks this is incisive commentary on either side. These are two men, nibbling around the edges of the real conversation. Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah. There was a conversational turn in there where Tucker Carlson was like, well, obviously, like, identity politics is fake and stupid, and identities are like not a thing you can use. And then Nick is like, identity is real. And then Tucker Carlson just goes like, yes, identity is real, right? He just fully 180s.
Yeah, when he's trying to agree and amplify without like agreeing and amplifying. Like, he's trying to bring this guy into the fold. He's trying to bring him in and like try to, like, a lot of people when they try to bring Fuentes in, they're trying to like curb the worst instincts of Fuentes, or the kind of their perceived worst instincts. The idea is like, well, Nick said this, but he was joking, or Nick said this, but like he didn't mean it in that way. Let's put some. It's like Sam Harris does this a lot, not with Nick Fuentes, obviously, but like I need to put nuance on this. There has to be like, we have to split this hair a little bit more finely. You're not really responding to his actual point. He's doing it with like Charles Murray back in the day, like
right.
That's a fascinating bit of like online history. am obsessed with that conversation. But
Yeah.
anyway, like he does that constantly with.
It's like if I can just paraphrase it in a way that will work for my audience, then like I'll have done a
Exactly.
good job. And it's like,
Exactly.
that's not a good job.
Well, and this is
Don't
part of the
do that.
this is part of the whitewashing process because Tucker, these two men have hated each other for years. I guarantee you.
Right.
There's no love lost
Yeah.
between these two. They are now like potentially allies for political reasons. But if Tucker really wanted to have a real conversation, he could have a real conversation with Nick Fuentes, and Nick Fuentes would
Of
show
course.
up for it. But one thing that is never said, I think I mentioned this earlier. Nick Fuentes attended Unite the Right. They mention Charlottesville. People from Charlottesville prefer to call it Unite the Right anyway. But they mention it and never mention.
Well, yeah.
Nick, you marched. You were there. You were you were in the crowd. And even later they do. I have a brief clip. They talk about Tucker's like no, there were feds. There were feds at Unite the Right. It's just like all those the people screaming racism. Like those are just federal agents. Those are just people trying to make the rest of you look bad. And it's like.
Right.
Even says David Duke is a Fed. It's like David Duke is so fine in Russian prison, my friend. I promise you, David Duke is not a Fed.
Okay. Let's go to that clip after we finish this one, which is almost done, but it has my favorite part in it, which is where like one of the main ways that you can counter Nick's point, which is like, oh, well, Zionism is Judaism is Zionism, right? And like, so all of this evil is like, it's not genetic, but it is like indoctrinated. And so like, it's a cultural necessity that like Jewish people in general, like a pressure, right? That they be super duper evil. And so Tucker Carlson has a little pushback to that, but he like gets so lost in his own sauce that like, it's just so weird to listen to. So hang on, I'm going to play it for you.
From Jewish leftists who were mugged by reality when they saw the surprise attack in the Yom Kippur War.
Yeah, well, that's a lot of it for sure. But then, like, how do you explain Mike Huckabee, Ted Cruz, and there are a lot like that, John Bolton. I mean, I've known them all. George W. Bush, like Karl Rove. I mean, all people I know personally who I've seen like be seized by this brain virus, and they're not Jewish. Most of them are self-described Christians, and then the Christian Zionists who are, well, Christian Zionists. Like, what is that?
Right.
And I can just say for myself, I dislike them more than anybody, because like what? Because it's Christian heresy, and I'm offended by that as a Christian. That's why. So I don't like. Why not? Like, I'm pissed at the neocons. Very pissed. I've said that a million times. I've been mad since December of 2003 when I went to Iraq. And so like I went and asked straightforward questions to Ted Cruz because that seemed like he was a sitting senator who's like serving for Israel by his own description. He seemed like a worthy target.
So what happened here is he had almost the chance, right, to have this conversation with Nick Fuentes about like, well, it's not fair of you to really just blame the Jews because Christian Zionists are like a really pernicious force in our country, and they have a lot to say and like a lot of money and influence going into like preserving this relationship with Israel. Like, but then gets too busy talking about himself to ever like let Nick Fuentes answer and like maybe negotiate their way to agreeing on that, because he's just like, and then in 2003 when I went to Iraq, and then I was talking to Ted Cruz, and then he goes on to mention like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and they both get like really misty-eyed about how lovely she is. It's like, dude, like you almost had a point. Like you almost pinned him down on his anti-Semitism. And then it just like Grandpa started telling stories about himself by the fire again. Like he just got lost.
Yeah, I mean, in Fuentes, the immediate thing that he's going to do in that situation is being like, well, yeah, but it's all in service of Israel. This shows how powerful the Israel lobby is that even Gentiles can be corrupted by it. That's the classic move that these people always use. It's so boring and stupid. I'm sorry. It's like, I've spent 10 years studying this, and excruciating detail.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry.
And like he didn't even have to do any stupid dance because Tucker just took care of it on his own by like changing the subject. And like it just became all about like the America First coalition instead of being like specifically about hey, like you need to stop blaming Jewish people for Zionism because Christian Zionism is like more powerful in this country. Like none of that happened at all.
It's like a classic move that people do when they're like interviewing Nick Fuentes is they'll ask a question and then performatively answer before he answers. It's like, well, look, Nick, I know you kind of have a reputation for not liking Jewish people, but like you don't really hate all the Jews. It's not all Jews, right? It's like kind of a cultural thing, or like they kind of explain that. And then Fuentes will either come and go, no, actually I do really dislike, Jewish power or whatever, or he'll, agree with the question, or kind of, there's always this attempt to soften Fuentes, and this is the way it goes. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
And why is that, Daniel? What is that in service to sort of this subconscious or perhaps conscious whitewashing attempt?
I mean, I think in most cases it is a conscious whitewashing. I can't imagine. I mean, it's too obvious. It's too routine. I mean, it's just, I mean, I could pull you 30 clips of this happening in various places. Tim Pool, Elijah Schaffer. Elijah Schaffer is basically a Nazi at this point. I mean, he is a Nazi at this point. I listened to his show. It's like I went without him for like a year and a half, and he's like, oh my god, all he does is talk about Jews now. It's like 100% of the time. It's disgusting.
It's funny to take a break from one of these guys and then you jump back in and you're like, what have you been doing?
Well, Schaffer himself, God, we don't need to talk about Elijah. If you want, I will come back and we'll talk about Elijah Schaffer another time. Believe me. Yeah,
please.
There's probably an IDSG in it. Like, we'll do more collaborations in the future. It's fine. But no, I mean, you hear this pretty continuously of taking these more right-wing figures. It isn't always Fuentes, but Fuentes is the most, of again, asking that pre-approving question, like I'm telling you how I want you to answer this, Nick. I'm telling you how to make this palatable to my audience. I'm telling you how I'm going to agree with you, and to do it ahead of time. It's like to some degree, that's how you interview and try to get like things out of people. But it's so overt. I don't believe in any case it's actually subconscious, or it's an intentional attempt to ride Fuentes' coattails insofar as he has them, and trying to get his street cred and trying to get his juice onto your show, while at the same time kind of curbing what you see as the worst tendencies. And and I don't know, Tucker almost has to descend into word salad because he has nothing really to say to Nick Fuentes except go ahead and say whatever you want to say, Nick.
Right.
Yeah, he's already kind of said the one thing he wants to say over and over again, which is that like, please just don't say that like all Jews are evil, and then we'll pretty much be good, right?
Yeah,
that's all he wants to say, and so the rest of it is simply filler. And then like a lot of the I think on Nick's side, a lot of it is like airing beefs where it's like, oh, you mentioned Marjorie Taylor Greene. Well, she pretended not to know who I am after she spoke at my conference. Like, what a jerk. And but I'm such a big person that I'll rise above it. If she wants to reach out to me, like I will absolutely be gracious. And this happened several times with different people of like, Carlson and Fuentes did this, right? Like Carlson was like, well, if Dave Rubin ever texted me to say like I had it all wrong, like I would totally be there for him. And it's like, this is sleepover talk. This is like middle school sleepover talk. What are we doing?
They got their Teddy Ruxpin and the
sorry, they're braiding each other's hair.
Braiding his hair, no, I get it. Doing each other's nails. No, I
popcorn, all thing.
Then you watch a scary movie and then everybody goes to bed. Yeah, no, that's
That's right. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, no.
Scary movie, what would that be for them? What would they want to watch?
Inglourious Bastards.
Inglourious Bastards.
Right, a real horror movie for Nazis. You're correct.
Raiders of the Lost Ark. Come on.
Some of them got away.
There's this bit in Black Klansman, which is a movie I have a lot of time for. I really like that movie. But there's a bit where the Klan members are sitting and watching Birth of a Nation, and they're like hooting and hawing, and they're like throwing popcorn, and like they loved watching Birth of a Nation. And the thing is, I actually witnessed that because I watched a live stream back during the days of like Nazi live streams on YouTube of two of the guys from the Daily Shoah literally seeing Birth of a Nation for the first time and getting into it like authentically is like, they thought that's the way the world is.
Out of their seats.
Exactly. I mean, Yeah.
disgusting.
Yeah.
That is truly sick.
I mean, to see it in the movie in Black Klansman and then go, no, that's literally what this is like. I've seen that in real life.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
crazy. You know. Yeah, no.
They had like people, consultants or whatever, who were like physically there, who knew this is what happens.
Exactly. Yeah, no.
They have to have. Okay, so yeah, let's talk about Unite the Right, because obviously Nick Fuentes was president at Unite the Right.
Yes.
The Groyper army was like a part of it.
So
Unite the Right
Groypers didn't
was
exist at that point. Groypers came later.
Oh, right. It was like
Yeah.
the proto Groyper. Oh, I always say Groper by accident. Sorry, guys.
You know, well, I'll allow it.
I'm not sorry about it.
Overlapping
Yeah.
circle.
They wish. Yeah.
It was larger than Nick Fuentes at that point. It was more like the Pepe army at that period. But
Okay.
even more so,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Unite the Right was a I don't know. I can talk about Unite the Right, you know, as long as you want.
Yeah.
I wasn't there, but you know, I watched it on TV. You know,
Yeah.
Well, I watched it on Twitter. And then later on, I became friends with some people who were there. So I'm, you know, I have strong feelings about it. Obviously,
Ultimately, like there's a lot of mythology, there's a lot of lore about Unite the Right, but it was an event. It was a rally, and it took place over, I guess you can tell us more succinctly, but like it took place over 2 days, right? Where like there was the sort of like we are the right, yay for us side, and then like the yucky side, the like Clockwork Orange, like let's go find some heads and bash them. Like
So over the course of the summer 2017, this was, you know, Trump's first year in office. So during that entire period, there was this negotiation sort of among various parts of what was then called the alt-right. And the alt-right was kind of a broader tent. It was kind of, you reach people who are like more kind of, you know, I'm basically a conservative. I'm a Republican, but I like to be a little bit edgier, all the way up to explicit white nationalist, Holocaust deniers, et cetera, et cetera. And there's this negotiation that's happening during this whole period. How much of this truly edgy, you know, far right Holocaust denying stuff can we integrate into the Republican Party? And everybody who was a podcast,
man, the more things change, right?
Oh. Well, this it doesn't have a happy ending. It has a happy middle. Let's put it that way. So,
Okay.
During that summer, there were a number of torch rallies that were held. Unite the Right was I believe it was the third. It was the last one, but they had several rallies previously where they were, you know, I forget the exact dates. I'd have to look it up in my notes, but so they were doing these torchlit rallies, you know, and always like planned at the last minute. They didn't advertise in advance. Unite the Right was supposed to be the big one, and the idea was we're going to take everybody, you know, all the MAGA people, all the deplorables, all the, Gavin McInnes, you know, these kind of figures who are edging in this kind of direction. We're going to make it all one thing, and we're going to stand. And the explicit purpose was, well, the stated purpose was we're going to defend the monuments and, you know, the Robert E. Lee Monument in Charlottesville, Virginia, and we're going to defend these other kind of symbols of our heritage, et cetera, et cetera. But the explicit thing, the real thing they're really trying to do is they're trying to say, we're here, we're Nazis, we're proud, this is who we are, etc. A few days before Unite the Right, all of the more moderate voices, all the Gavin McInnes told people, don't go. This is going to be a disaster. These guys are going to be outright Nazis. You don't want to be a part of that. Gavin McInnes, he is an anti-Semite. He is, you know, he is one of these guys, but he has better optics, you know, and knows when to stay away and when not to stay away. Basically there was, Unite the Right was supposed to do this one event on August 12th on that Saturday. But they ended up doing a torchlit march the Friday night previously. So, and that's not the university campus. That's all the night footage that you've seen from the torches and everything. That's from the night before. And that was kind of planned later on. Amazingly, Emily Gorczynski she was right there in the midst of it. She was live streaming at the time, and she's like their number one enemy. And they're like, you know, you know, she's literally mocking their security on the live stream while she's recording them. You know, it's pretty amazing stuff.
Classic.
But and that's where all the torch marking. That's where, you know, you see people like beaten with sticks and, you know, all that kind of stuff from that. So the actual torch march is the day later. And again, anybody who says like, oh, you know, the Nazis were just like a side, no. They were hardcore. It was very clear. I was listening to the propaganda at the time. I was listening to the podcast at the time. They knew exactly what they were doing, and all the moderates dropped out because they didn't want to be associated with this really extreme stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
This is the point.
And so everybody who was there was like essentially de facto on board.
De facto
and the
on board.
chants were Jews will not replace us. The
Yes.
chants were explicitly Nazi.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No. There was no, and the idea was we're going to unite the right behind this banner, but ultimately the only people who showed up were the Nazis. Of course, you had the tragic death of Heather Heyer. And we can't, I don't want to elide that. And the injuries of a couple of dozen other people in that James Ellis Field's car attack. I have heard so much dissembling over that over the course of the last 8 years in terms of
unacceptable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and in the 2020 BLM stuff, cars trying to run protesters over became almost commonplace. Where it happened in Portland a few times, and some women in a truck tried to hit the ICE protesters this year. In the street. And so just running your truck into people just sort of became a thing you can do if you're mad. That sucks so bad.
Molly Conger over at Weird Little Guys has this really amazing episode kind of detailing kind of the history of car attacks in this way. I will send you a link. You can link it in the show notes if you don't mind.
Yes,
because it's just amazing stuff. What I was going to say, the sort of the happy biddle, and something that I think we should really draw strength from, and something that I personally draw strength from, is that those protesters in the streets, not the Nazis, but the counter protesters, the anti-fascists who are in the streets, who fought those guys, who made it difficult, who made their lives difficult, who made the authorities shut this thing down, shut that event down, and everybody scattered into the winds. There was no thought of uniting the right for years. And it was because of people more courageous than I will ever be, putting their physical bodies on the line and saying, this is a line you cannot cross. This is legitimate heroism. I get tinglies even thinking about how amazing that work was, because literally everybody, all the people who were there, they scattered, and nobody wanted to be associated with that thing for years and years and years. And even now, Nick Fuentes won't talk about, I was there that day,
Dude.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So he was working at, what was it? Right Side Media?
Right Side Broadcasting Network. And I don't know if he was...
Right Side Broadcasting.
He had a couple of different stints with them, and so I don't know the exact history, but so I believe he was...
Right.
He had gone to college. He was going to, I think, Boston University at that time. So I'm not sure. So he was at Boston University and he dropped out. I think he was going to go to Auburn, and then just never went back to college, and then started his podcast with James Alsop, and then, that's all she wrote.
And then who needs a degree at this point? He's famous, baby. So, so what happened there was he was working at Right Side Broadcasting, whatever.
RSBN.
RSBN, thank you. He got fired there, and Media Matters said that it's because of his participation in Charlottesville.
Right.
But on Tucker Carlson, he says it's not that at all. It's actually because of his comments about the Muslim ban, Trump's Muslim ban. And so he was like, oh yeah, persecuted for free speech, right? And Media Matters is like, no, persecuted for doing crimes.
It's also like, who has free speech at Right Side Broadcasting Network? Actually, I think universal basic income is good. Okay, you're fired.
Right.
I think black people are human. Fuck you. No.
Yeah. You're done. Get out.
Yeah.
This was again an opportunity for him to air a beef, right? Because he had some coworker / friend at RSBN who he blames for basically feeding clips of him speaking to Media Matters in order to take him down, because she was upset about, I think, his position on Israel.
Is that
and
Cassie
that's
Dillon?
his
Is that Cassie Dillon? He's blaming for that, if I remember correctly. I can't speak to the factual accuracy of that, but I would believe it 100%. It's a den of vipers over there.
Right? Yeah. Well, and when not in this interview, but in his interview, I think with Gavin McInnes, which was also a recent thing that he did, he kind of gave the impression that he had thought that there would be a romantic connection with that girl. And then he was really mad that actually she married a Jewish guy and converted to Judaism. And it was this whole drama. It's all interpersonal gross nonsense.
Like
right?
we talked about with Amanda.
Yeah.
Exactly, right? And like and there's always a girl, right? Because Amanda was like, well, he's in love with this other girl and he's always talking about her. Like it's just like, oh my God, please grow up. Again with the sleeping parties, like the sleeping party, that's a word he believes. With the sleepover thing, like just like, you know, put the like little hair ribbons away and just like grow up and talk about grown-up things. But yeah, he's like, oh yeah, it's because like this girl was mad at me, and so that's why she like fed dirt to Media Matters, and like maybe she did, maybe she didn't, but you also very much were at Unite the Right, and that is why you were terminated.
Yes, exactly. I was just expressing my free speech rights to not think Jews should exist.
Right. And to like
you're canceling me for my free
big
speech?
sticks.
Come on, yeah.
What's the big deal?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay. So then they also had a conversation about Unite the Right where, and as you pointed out, they often will just refer to it as Charlottesville.
Yes.
Like, I feel like the phrase Unite the Right is like very tainted. So let's see if I have the right clip here.
So I have a...
oh, hang on. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I have a time code that's kind of around where I was thinking with like the Tucker, Fuentes, and Feds. I have it around an hour 21. So if you're near there, you're probably in the spot I wanted to be. So if you have something else, that's fine.
I'm going to do your sound file, and I think that's going to be right. So
okay.
Let's see.
Yeah, I think it's only like a minute long. So
and just finding out the number of FBI personnel in the crowd, it's like, and I've just seen this. David Duke is a great example. Some of these are the Charlottesville rally.
Mm-hmm, yeah,
had a bunch of feds there being like, we're white supremacists, we hate the blacks, using the N-word, whatever. It's like, that's not real. Like, there is some of that going on, don't you think?
Again, Tucker Carlson whitewashing. The blacks, oh my God.
The blacks, we hate the blacks. Like no, that actually was the overriding sentiment of Unite the Right. I'm sorry you don't want to admit that. But like that wasn't feds pretending to be super duper racist in order to make you guys look bad. That was you guys.
And that was Nick Fuentes personally being one of them. Like it isn't even guys like Nick Fuentes, it's literally Nick Fuentes.
So his examples of like Fed wreckers were January 6th, David Duke, and Unite the Right.
Yes, hold on. Duke. How meta is that, though, that you are doing an interview with a person who was at Charlottesville, but not mentioning he was there, and then him not being like, oh, I was there, and this is what... That is just absolutely insane. I don't even know how they're functional.
He absolutely could have just said, no, I was there, and I was one of the good people, and the racists were over there, and yeah, they were probably feds. No, he doesn't. He just like, all right, go ahead and say what you want to say, old man. He kind of does this too. He kind of does this to Alex Jones too. Is like Alex Jones is just over there ranting about frogs being gay, and Nick Fuentes is like, "I got this. We're fine."
Yeah, whatever, buddy. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, what a mess.
When the right learns that some animals are sexually dimorphic, they are going to fucking bug out. They are not going to know what to do with themselves. So I hope that happens.
Trent, that's only because they put chemicals in the water to make the freaking frogs gay. No. This.
I've been told that, and I laughed. I was like, buddy, just like go talk to a biologist here for a little bit.
Or just watch Jurassic Park. That's what it's about. That's the whole turning point of that movie is that they have frog DNA. Come on.
You can't expect these people to know what deoxyribonucleic acid is. They couldn't even pronounce it.
No.
Like a little cartoon DNA strand explains it. It's not a
problem. That's true. That's true.
But again, this brings us back to something we've talked about before. Do they really not know any of these references, or do they just pretend to not know these references because people like us are going to be like, have they not seen Jurassic Park? They got the frog DNA.
Well, right? the answer they give is, well, that's just a movie, and that's not how things work in real life, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, well, they never say that about Mel Gibson movies.
How frogs work.
Right? That
is how things work. Yeah.
Well, talking about references, if you don't mind, I do have another. I didn't clip this personally, but I got a time point for you, and we can go through some names. I think this is something you were talking about. Like they drop a little references and don't explain those references.
Where does that leave you ideologically? Like, how are you changing at this point?
So at this point, I'm realizing that something is deeply wrong here in the conservative movement, because we were led to believe in those days of the campus culture wars and Gamergate and all that, is that we're the marketplace of ideas and we're about free speech and the rest of it. And here I am being like nuked from orbit by Ben Shapiro as a kid, and for asking what I thought were reasonable questions, because I didn't come from some strange background. I come from a normal home. You know, my parents are Catholic, they're married. We came from a relatively affluent suburb. I went to Lyons Township. That's like a very affluent high school. In other words, I didn't wake up as like the son of, William Luther Pierce. I wasn't like a skinhead or something. You know, I was like a normal guy that was like, yeah, like country's too diverse. We're too pro-Israel. Like, this is reasonable. And I was just getting sandbagged for it and blacklisted. And what's more, nobody cared. Like, because I remember going on Twitter and saying like, why isn't anyone sticking up for me? Where's Dave Rubin? The free speech warrior. Where's he on this one? Where's Shapiro? Where's all these people? And in some way, they were all sort of complicit in this. So I realized that the conservative movement was completely bankrupt in that way.
Yeah,
and I became very radical.
Well, you became
okay. So we had some references in there.
Yeah. So,
is that
particular name William Luther Pierce? William Luther Pierce. Do you know who William Luther Pierce is? Okay.
Why don't you tell us about William Luther Pierce?
Yeah. Well, William Luther Pierce is the, thankfully now dead, but, he's been dead for 20-something years. We don't wish death on most people, but William Luther Pierce, I think we're allowed to be happy he's dead. He was the founder of the National Alliance. He ran the National Alliance for a while, which is an explicitly white nationalist, explicitly neo-Nazi, group, and the author of the Turner Diaries under a pseudonym.
Right.
And the fact that Tucker Carlson just, that Fuentes names drops him that easily. It's like, oh, I'm not William Luther, or the son of William Luther Pierce for that matter. I'm not the son of William Luther Pierce. And then Tucker just lets it go.
The son of William Luther Pierce has been dedicating a significant amount of time and energy to fighting the influence of the book, The Turner Diaries. Like, yes, he is indeed explicitly anti the legacy of his father.
I think if my dad were William Luther Pierce, I would do the same. So yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
But the fact that
right. Well, he said he had to. He said he had to live. He had to like do a lot of healing himself, because guess what? The guy who wrote the Turner Diaries was also an abusive father. Weird. Who would have guessed, right?
Shocker.
So he was like, well, first I had to take care of my own brain so that I would have the ability to come forward and work on combating the effects of this book. And so like he did that, and now he's working in turbo mode at this point. Anyway.
It is worth noting. Have either of you read the Turner Diaries just by chance?
No,
I have not read the entire one. No,
it's a really bad book, but it's also this very like 50s sci-fi book, and a lot of its structure and everything, and it reads like it's like a Heinlein juvenile. If a Heinlein juvenile was like the most racist thing you've ever seen in your life.
Right.
The other
only the fifth most racist.
The super racist Heinlein was an adult novel. It was Farnham's Freehold. Anyway, right. Sorry, telling jokes here. Anyway, but I mean, just
my dad's gonna really love that one.
I grew up on Heinlein. I suffer for my sins. It's okay. Anyway, no, what I think is really, I mean, again, the fact that like neither one of them feels the need to explain that reference speaks a lot to kind of where the conversation is. Tucker either doesn't know. I mean, maybe he doesn't know William Luther Pierce, or maybe I was presuming he does know and just does not want to go there, and to explain. So how exactly are you different from William Luther Pierce again?
Well, because again, that's not going to get his base fired up about doing good things. They need to be lied to gently, and absolutely. And as you noted, this is what his program sort of does, and it's what it did even dating back to he had his program on Fox News, but then on the streaming service. He had his other log cabin program where it's like, yeah, come on. Didn't you have Charles Marion, right? Come on and let's talk about like the worst stuff in the whole wide
Tell me
world.
all about.
You
Yeah.
know?
Well, right. This is like another chance for him to be like, oh, I'm not William Luther Pierce. I'm anti Semitic in a very reasonable way for
Right.
good reasons that are
Yes.
smart and correct and based on facts.
Yes, indeed.
So now here we are.
Absolutely.
And I was cucked by the right wing, by the conservative movement. You know, they didn't stand up for
Well,
me when I
yeah.
asked, why do we have so many different looking people? Isn't that reasonable to say? I mean, just if I were interviewing him as Tucker Carlson, I'd be like, what are you doing? Shut up,
Yeah.
you idiot.
I
Yeah,
think,
exactly.
everybody in this conversation and everyone who's listening to it has learned enough about Nick Fuentes to understand that anytime he says, I was canceled for asking questions, or nobody came to my defense, or I got fired because I asked reasonable questions, the reasonable questions were more often than not like a violent threat, a violent act. Later on, they talk about him getting put on the no-fly list for a year. He was like, I can't believe I was on the no-fly list. And Tucker Carlson is like, you were what? And you were just a guy asking questions. And he was not a guy asking questions. In fact, he was a guy making explicit violent threats to flight attendants.
Yeah.
Like that is why he was put on the no-fly list, right? And he does not mention that at all, because it's always just, I just had some really reasonable questions about why we're so supportive of
Right.
Israel. Like, you have those questions? Don't you, audience, have those questions? And everyone's like, yeah, I do. Oh my gosh, Nick Fuentes is me.
Nick
Fuentes.
Nick Fuentes and me were like little hard eyes to each other.
Exactly.
But-
Right? But like, we know anytime he's like, well, I was just asking questions, you're like, were you? Or were you like shoving a lady down the stairs and macing her or whatever the fuck?
But again,
what were you actually doing?
These are just two liars. We're just watching a conversation between two liars. They're just lying back and forth to each other. It's tennis for lying. It's oh man, let's talk about Charlottesville. Wish we had somebody there who could like reference it, right?
Anyone?
Right. It's just this constant bad faith. And I think what always frustrates me, thinking about external factors, is that, as you noted, Daniel, there are people who watch that and are not repulsed. Like they're watching it to actually like hear what these people are saying, this word salad, this drivel, this ineffectual sort of bad faith cosplaying of
They're
journalism.
just there to like hear a couple of Nazis make friendly noises at each other.
Literally.
Essentially.
Yeah, no, I mean, it really, I mean, this technique, I mean, sorry, I'm belaboring this a little bit, but this technique of like dropping
That's
these
okay.
subtle dropping these references to these people and then not explaining it, but just saying like, it's like saying, well, as an old Austrian painter once said, that sort of, or to name them, but then
Just a
not
cutesy little
describe
joke.
it. The idea of like just dropping William Luther Pierce and just not commenting on it at all, just being like, oh, he was like a thinker who was like slightly different, or obviously they're kind of referring to him as being negatively at that point. It's like I'm not Pierce, I'm not a skinhead, etc. But it's still like he doesn't have to drop the name. I don't know. It's fascinating that they choose to go there, and then Tucker. Obviously, he's on board with it because he doesn't like go like, well, yeah, but why even talk about that?
Right.
Later on,
Yeah.
we don't have to drop
to name somebody that bad, to be like, I'm one step better than that, is like, oh, so still very bad.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. They keep talking about David Duke. David Duke gets referenced over and over again, and it's like, well, I mean, as the Fed, as the bad guy, but like nobody really believes the things that David Duke claims to believe, because David Duke is just a Fed. It's like, no, Nick Fuentes believes like 95% of the things that David Duke believes. Also, one of the most unpleasant experiences of my life was listening to David Duke's autobiography.
Oh my God.
It's
not read by the author, is it?
It is read by the author with commentary. He'll go through the book text of like where he quotes some like terrible thing about black people, and then he'll go, and actually since I wrote the book, I found out this and this, and so it's like this very stream of consciousness. absolutely terrible.
You
It's
know,
about 22 hours long. Yeah, that was a
yeah,
rough week.
that sounds horrifying.
That's
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting that Nick Fuentes talks about David Duke being this sort of like fed or like cop out or liar, because you know, in the book When the Clock Broke, right, he goes, John Gans goes into sort of how at a point in time the same sort of circumstance was occurring,
Oh
where
yeah,
David
absolutely.
Duke is like going on to talk shows and radio programs, and he is saying his thing, and he's getting these like softball questions, and he's making jokes. The person who's interviewing him is like, what's this about making a map of the United States where Long Island is where all the Jews are? And he's like, well, that's just, that was just nonsense. I don't really believe that. And everyone like jokes and laughs. Like, it's just like a fun thing. We're just talking to somebody who has like heterodox beliefs. And there's like no pushback. There's no like legitimate pushback. There's no, you're a Nazi. And so I
please leave.
right. So I guess my question is, why is time a flat circle, and why do we continue to live in the same thing over and over again?
Can you please explain this?
Well, I mean, there's no institutional memory at this point. I mean, it really is like there is no history, there is no knowledge of this, and I think that's part of what I've been trying to do on 90 Speak German. I think that's part of what you're doing here. I mean, I won't speak for you, but is to point out these things and to make it clear that like this stuff has a history, and this stuff, it isn't just we're just sitting and debating ideas in this effervescent, like in the Roman amphitheater. We're all in togas and just lofting goblets of wine and discussing the fine. No. This is policy. This has like real material effect on people's lives. Nick Fuentes being closer to the center of power makes the lives of a lot of people. I think everybody on this call and many of the people who are listening, it makes all of our lives substantially worse every day. And the more that Nick Fuentes is normalized, and you're right, that there is a direct connection. I mean, the second episode of I Don't Speak German was David Duke, and precisely because David Duke was doing this in the 70s. I mean, David Duke was marching against civil rights when he was 17 years old. He very much, Nick Fuentes studied that man and knew what to do and what not to do. He was appearing on in 1978. In the mid 70s, he was in 78. He appeared on Donahue for the first time. In the mid 70s, he was appearing on talk shows and going like, well, we're a member of the Klan, but we're the good Klan, and then later on it's like, well, no, the Klan is bad and I'm not a member of the Klan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he ends up serving as a state representative in Louisiana. And came very close to winning the governorship. It's it's just reality. I mean, Pat Buchanan. We can talk about Pat Buchanan sometime. Pat Buchanan was a respected figure. It's still a respected figure in many circles. Outright, Nazi apologia through a lot of his books. Appeared on far right radio programs. I won't name them. I'm naming them all.
Was on NBC. Was a contributor on NBC.
Was on NBC and also appeared on far right radio programs. That's the clear. Was like on the McLaughlin group for 30 years or whatever. Ran for president in 2000. In 92. It's fully mainstream figure in the Republican.
So that's another good example of that like chameleon thing of just switching it up depending on who your audience is. And then I mean, we talked about how Nick Fuentes does this, Charlie Kirk did this, where like after he died there were people who were like, but didn't he just make videos about how like God is great and miracles are real and heaven is going to be so wonderful? And it's like, no, like he made those ones for you, but for other people he made these videos where he was like, gay people should get stoned to death. Like, do you understand? Like these are the same guy. So like you are sad about the guy who made the lovely Instagram reels about how angels have fluffy wings. That's the same guy that also did these ones.
Correct.
Indeed. Yeah, the thing with Charlie Kirk and the joke that I've been making is, everybody wants to claim all the wonderful things Charlie Kirk said over his life without ever actually quoting anything he actually said.
Yeah. He was such an inspirational figure. He loved God so much. What are some things he said? Oh gosh, I don't know.
Oh yeah,
Please don't ask
let's
me
not
that.
talk about that. No.
And never quote them to me. Never quote them to me or
Never. Oh,
onto
God.
social media.
If you do, I'll get you fired. I will
Yeah,
get you
you're done.
fired.
You're
or
done.
maybe jailed. Depending.
I love that man. Never say anything he's ever said to me.
Yes.
Yeah, I will get so mad that I ruin your life. Okay, so yeah, that's gross. Let's see. They talked about the time that someone came to his house with a gun. That was exciting.
Yeah.
I tried to look it up a little bit. The one thing that I was really focused on is he explicitly blamed the Southern Poverty Law Center. He's like, they put up a picture of my house, and so then everybody knew to come and get me. But if you read into what actually happened with this, they're actually, this was at the tail end of a wave of swattings, right? Which is that thing where if you want to fuck up somebody's day, you can pretend to be them and be like, I just shot my wife in the head or whatever. And then the SWAT team comes in violently into their home. Right. So you have to know where they live in order to do that, obviously. And that had been happening a whole bunch because he had already been doxxed. The SPLC article did not tip the scale at all. He had already been extremely super duper doxxed. And that's kind of why SPLC was able to write this article that was oh, Nick Fuentes says that he's streaming from his parents' basement, but actually he has a crazy expensive brownstone in Chicago. And where's he getting all that money from? That's weird, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so that was what the article was. So what happened at this point is just earlier, some woman had shown up to his place yelling at him because she was upset with him. And he pushed her down the stairs and maced her in the face, which that's a lot. I mean, I get being scared that someone's at your house and yelling at you. But he got cited for assault for that. And then a guy came with a crossbow and a loaded gun and was apparently yelling yo, Nick, into his Ring camera. And then his producer called the cops, and the cops ran him off, and he fired at the cops. The cops shot him. He died. And it turned out he had killed 3 people before he got to Nick's house. So truly legitimately scary. That was an exciting story to tell. I don't know. Do you have any other details about that? Are you any thoughts?
No, I mean, it's these guys. I mean, look, I looked up the news stories. It seems to be broadly true that this happened to him.
Right.
Obviously we don't support this happening, and but it's also this happens to a lot of people. I don't know, you made yourself very famous. It's very clear where you live. The SPLC did not dox you.
No. That's the main thing. SPLC did not dox you. This was the story, the thesis of the story was basically the Jews like to mess up my life, right? Because it was in a list of Israel, the Israel Lobby, the ADL, and Southern Poverty Law Center are generally involved in messing up my life. Here's an example. They doxed me on their website, and then a guy came with a crossbow and a gun. So it was definitely part of his the Jews hate me thing.
Oh yeah, no, I mean
which is part of why that's part of his proof for why he's not a Fed too. Is well, if I was doing this to make anti-Israel people look bad, would they have sent all of this all of these problems my way?
Right, yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, it's all a bunch of, I mean, look, again, I don't recommend that people do this to Nick Fuentes, but it's all part of the Staub story.
No.
If he didn't have this story to tell, he would tell another story. He would tell, stories about being, accosted in the streets because of the things I believe. All these guys do this stuff, I mean, it's, it's it's just
right.
So I don't know, I mean, I'm glad you went into it. I wasn't really going to cover it because I'm just kind of if he didn't have this story, he would invent something. I mean, it's just the grievance.
He would pick another one. He loves to be I'm not doing sob stories, right? I don't want to be oh, poor me. Anyway, here's a story about how poor me I am.
Here's a story about how terrible people are to me for no reason except for the things that I say out in public.
Right.
Right. Everybody's always so mean to me, even though I'm just such a wonderful, perfect little
Right.
boy.
But again, there are two wolves in these people,
Yes.
and one is a big strong wolf, right? And another is like a sad little wolf. And oh, everybody's
Yeah.
so mean to me. I do not understand it. All I'm doing is asking questions. But also, I'm big and powerful, and if anybody comes up to me, we're the smartest people. We're the best
Right.
people. Very, very confusing from the outside
Mhm.
because you don't necessarily understand how a person can stake out both positions at the same time. But then I think
Yeah.
as you move throughout the world a little bit more and you meet a little bit more people, a few more folks, you're like, all right, no, I can see this totally. Like people do this every day. They're staking out like differing positions. They're like, I am the best, and also like I am accosted constantly for something. You know, I'm constantly. No one's ever taking accountability. So I guess, to me at least, I see that as actually something that people identify with. That is actually like
Right.
a subconsciously attractive quality.
Sure.
Because like I also feel this
Ugh.
about myself. You know.
Yeah. He is sort of the king of the birthday boys, right? Where he's like, he'll talk a really big game, and then if somebody messes with him, he's like, oh, I can't believe you would do that to me. I'm just such a little birthday. You wouldn't hit me on my birthday. Like, I'm just a little guy, you know. And so that he was doing the little guy act really hard on Papa Tucker. You know, maybe he's like projecting sort of a father-son relationship or something. I don't
God,
know.
yeah.
It does feel a little bit like you got caught like stealing candy from the neighbor's larder, and you got called into Dad's workshop to like talk about it. Where Dad's like, "You're a good boy, really," and he's like, "Yeah, I'm a good boy, really." Like, that's the vibe of this whole interview.
Yeah, it's like your shittiest uncle. Like you're talking to your shittiest uncle in his terrible workshop. And I mean,
Yeah.
nightmare blunt rotation.
Yeah.
Doesn't even begin.
You didn't really mean it, did you, son? I didn't really mean it.
All right, I
Ugh,
believe
gross.
you.
And it's very clear Fuentes has no actual respect for Tucker Carlson in this interview. Like,
No.
he
just pushes him around all the time.
Absolutely. We don't have to pull clips for this, but I did have a couple other names. And at one point, this one is actually, it might be funny.
Yeah.
If you want to play it, we can play it. But he mentions at one point, and Fuentes does it, he is an admirer of Joseph Stalin. And Tucker literally stops.
Okay.
Do you want to play it?
So I'll just summarize like the context where they were like, oh, all this doxing and harassment was happening. And then he was like, and then one day it like suddenly stopped. And I remember what day it was because it was December 18th, which is an important date to me. And Tucker's like, why is December 18th important? And he's like, oh, it's Joseph Stalin's birthday. And I love him. And Tucker's like, you what? And he said, yeah, I'm a great admirer.
And then Tucker just goes, okay, there are certain areas.
Carlson's like,
Tucker just literally goes, maybe we'll get back to that later, and just never touches it again. And just never touches it again.
Absolutely not.
Love it.
Yeah, what's that about, man?
I mean, that's got to be just like, the strong leader type. I mean, it's got to be just, that simple for
domination. Yeah.
Domination. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fuentes imagines.
I was thinking like, it's the authoritarianism. He's like, oh yeah, I just really love how he was an authoritarian in a really effective way and killed a lot of people. That's also very fun.
And he also probably identifies with like Stalin's like early like religiosity, with that Eastern Orthodox. His mom wanted him to be a priest. That type of like orthodoxy and to take what many considered even during the 19th century to be like the most brutal of monarchies. I'm sure he sees a lot, but again, like we always talk about, Caitlin, knowing your audience, kind of interesting that he would say like, yes, big fan of Stalin on Tucker Carlson's program.
Yeah. It feels like one of those things that he does, which is to like go out on the edge and be like, ooh, I'm a little dangerous. Isn't that fun? And then sort of get back into safety, it's a classic.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I always say you can see it in their eyes when these guys do this kind of thing. They look like a toddler who's out of control. Where they're like, I know I'm not doing the right thing. Is someone going to stop me? Like it's that. You can see it in their face.
I'm going for the cookie jar. Look at me. Is mom gonna stop
Exactly,
me?
yeah.
Yep.
The way my 3-year-old looks at me while she goes for her Halloween bag after she's already had her treat for the day, like, that's what I'm looking at right there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Only a parent can fully understand that the impulse. I love it. I love it. It's great.
Like,
Oh,
I see you. You know you're misbehaving, you know I know you're misbehaving, you're just waiting to see what will happen, like
Yes.
and there's, like, an adrenaline rush associated with that. You can see it kind of wash through their system where they're just like, "Ugh," and that's why, like, they have to chase it because it is a rush.
yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Uh, I had one more. Again, we probably won't play the clip because it's long. But
Yeah.
uh, at one point, of course, they have to talk about how terrible trans people are because that's just what you do on the right wing now. You got to talk about
Right.
how terrible trans people are. And so, of
Right.
course, it's like, well,
Yeah.
at first it starts out with porn, and they kind of like how bad porn is, and I've never consumed pornography, et cetera, et cetera. It's like you were good friends with your Catboy Cammy back in the day, who was doing some oddball shit, doing his Nazi Catboy thing. Anyway, I'm not going to pretend to know what that's
Yep.
about, whether that was a consummated relationship or not. I have no opinion. But they certainly looked very cozy together in that particular live stream.
Yeah.
But moving on. And then it's like, well, and porn does these terrible things to young men, and they're turning in like they see women and they want to become women, and therefore, and then he references he
Right.
doesn't. I think he uses the word autogynephilia, but he references it to
He does,
Steve
yeah.
Saylor and not Ray Blanchard.
That's really weird. I thought that was so weird.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, like autogynephilia is coined by Ray Blanchard, who is like he's a fringe disgraced sexologist, and
Yes.
his belief about autogynephilia is that like basically there are two kinds of trans women. There are the kind that are autogynephiles who are turned on by the idea of like having sex but being women while they're having sex. And then there's homosexual transsexuals, HSTS, right, which is like his other category. But they were only really interested in autogynephilia. So that's where it was. The other one, it's like, oh, you like women, but you want to have sex with, I don't know what it is. You love women so much that you have to become one so you can get access to more of them or something. I
Yeah.
can't even remember.
It's-
But AGP, autogynephilia. So he was like, not Ray Blanchard, it was Steve Saylor. Steve Saylor, who of course is a white supremacist who founded VDare. Is that what it was?
I think
Goodness,
he's
I'm
more.
like
I think
so-
he's more Uns Review. I think is more his.
or
Side.
worked there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he worked for VW.
Oh,
I don't
Uns
think
Review,
he's-
right.
Yeah, Uns Review is his
He
thing.
worked
He's
for
been
VDare.
an open white supremacist in the like kind of pseudo academic fields for 30 years or something like that. Now probably more than that.
Right.
And I mean, I believe that Nick Fuentes read it first on Steve Saylor's website. That I believe.
Yeah, for sure.
But the idea to reference Saylor
Yeah.
there, and again, Tucker just lets it slide on by. Oh,
Right.
Steve Saylor, who's
Right.
that? Seems like it's a
Oh.
reference. Yeah. Oh, let's.
Steve Saylor to me is like really crucial because he was like part of that infamous human biodiversity email
Absolutely.
list,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
That they were, it was like academics and pseudo academics sharing like research and ideas
Yeah.
with each other, which included some really prestigious academics. That's the thing that really like got
Yeah.
me angry, is that people like Steven Pinker, for example, were very comfortable interacting with Steve Saylor
Yes.
and sharing ideas and being chill with him while pretending to be like a liberal egalitarian type person. But trafficking in these disgusting white supremacist pseudoscientific beliefs.
Yeah. No. Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
yeah, it turns out Fuentes is a fan too. Big surprise. No kidding.
Well, Saylor says the things that Fuentes already believes. I mean, Fuentes
That's
couldn't
right.
do the scientific method if his life depended on it. If you were going to cut off his left testicle
That's
or
right.
make him describe what an experiment is, he'd lose that left testicle.
He'd take he'd take the knife.
But again, science doesn't explain existence the way that these people wish existence to be. And so it should never surprise us that they fall into pseudoscience, because pseudoscience is, as you
Yeah.
noted, Daniel, literally just bullshit that validates the biases that I already have. Right.
Exactly.
This is a classic fascist tendency to like create these bogus taxonomies give them a bunch of terms that sound legit, right? They do it with race science, race and IQ. They do it with sexology and like what actually explains trans people. And they're like, well, obviously we're going to pathologize it, and we're going to do some rankings, and we're going to make lists, and we're going to create terms, right? And then it's going to seem really legit, but it is truly just our prejudices reinscribed with new terminology.
Yeah. Women be shopping,
So
but it's got references now.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into their like men are like this, women are like that segment, because that was like sort of part of it, right?
Yeah.
So they got real sexist real fast, and this drove me absolutely up the wall, where Fuentes was like, well, feminists, and Tucker Carlson is like, that's not a real thing, is it? Real women don't believe in feminism. And he was actually like so surprised that like feminists could possibly exist. And he was like, he also claimed that there's no such thing as a happily married liberal woman. And I was like, I mean, there are, like, again, as a happily married liberal woman, like, we exist.
You can't really be really happy, Caitlin. I mean, that's just, don't worry your pretty little head about it. Like, clearly you're really unhappy. Yeah. You'd be much happier if you just accepted the domination of your Republican man and all that. That's almost literally what they said.
I'm here in a video chat with you guys instead of like bringing my husband a sandwich, so I must actually be miserable, right? Like,
you're very, very sad.
I mean, any time you spend with me is probably a very sad time, but
we're asking you the questions that are making us sad, so like we're doing it.
Fair enough.
We're doing it to ourselves. But like, yeah, he was like, oh, well, women, they're very intuitive and men are very cerebral, and like men love math and space, and women love like babies and feelings, and women are the earth. Women are so earthy, they're so in tune with like nature, and men are more like industrial. Like women are dirt and men are metal, and it's like, what are you doing right now? Like, this is so weird. It is weird.
It's literally like, everything I ever needed to learn about gender relations, I learned from Tim Allen comedies in the 1990s.
Right. It was like men drive cars and women pet kitties, and like, like, what are you doing, dude? Yeah. And then they were like, they quoted somebody where they were like, oh yeah, well, like men understand the universe, like men study the universe, women are the universe. And then they got like very metaphysical about, we create life, et cetera, et cetera.
I think that was the Spengler reference. That was the Oswald Spengler reference, I believe.
Spengler, thank you.
Yes. The famous right-wing German, Nazi era theoretician. Again,
also
just
that was weird as hell.
Very mainstream. Yeah, everyone just references him all the time. Absolutely. Who doesn't go throughout the day being like, oh, Spengler, yeah, remember that?
Yeah, Spengler's views on gender roles really valuable for us at this time. So yeah, that was what it was. And again, like I'm always amazed by these sort of like mystical understandings of like child birth and rearing and labor and all of that stuff, because of course I have had 2 children. I grew them in my body, and it was the least magical experience of my life. Like, I've had more like connection with my role in the universe by like horseback riding or like hiking a mountain or like like just like basically there's a list of like 100 things I would say before like having a part of your body grow so large that the rest of your body hurts. Like, that's just annoying is what that is.
You only say that because you hate children, Caitlin. It's because you secretly want the white race to be exterminated. That's all you're trying to do.
Right, because you're an unhappy married liberal. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why I married my white husband and made our 2 blonde children. Like, that's me.
Oh, man. You are a race curator.
That's sweet. Listen, well, I am because I should have had 8 instead of 2, right? Like I'm only
Right.
doing replacement rate. I'm
Oh
not
God,
acceptably
I'm
prolific.
I'm working on a Full House episode right now. That's exactly what they believe anyway. Full House being a Nazi dad podcast anyway. So
Right,
Oh
not
man.
the famous 90s
no,
sitcom,
no, no.
but,
It's Full House.
this
Full House.
horrible
House
racist
is
podcast.
spelled Haus. The like Full
Oh,
House. You know. Yeah.
they
Oh my
are
God. I
just.
mean, yeah. So anyway, yeah, I think like the casual reference to Spangler is another moment of being like
These are all red
winky
flags.
winky,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
It's
While they're talking about and like women and how much they love women and that's why they want to help us by reminding us about our subservient role in the household, right? And this actually reminded me of I watched the interview between Tucker Carlson and Andrew Tate a while back, and
Ugh.
Carlson did that annoying thing that he does where he like tilts his head to the side and his voice goes all high, and he's like, "Well, I thought sexism and misogyny was when you hate women, but Andrew, you seem like you really love women." In a conversation in which Andrew Tate was like, women shouldn't have the right to vote because they vote with their hearts and not their heads. Like that, he was like, wow, it sounds like you really just want to take care of women. And he's like, yeah, you're right. I do want to take care of women by taking away all of their rights.
Tucker
Like,
Carlson is a
that
bad person. Andrew Tate has done so many terrible things to women. I mean, the fact that you're laundering that as good faith
Mhm.
discussion is beyond reprehensible. I mean, he's
Right.
dealing with stuff in Romania, he's dealing with stuff in England, he's dealing with stuff in Florida. A lot of people
Because he
been
keeps
hurt
doing sex trafficking. Yeah.
or
And
abuse,
so
like choking people out. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But like in this conversation, Nick Fuentes raises Andrew Tate as an example of the future of the right-wing man. Like this is how men ought to be,
Yeah.
is, take charge, be clear about you're not going to allow any kind of decision-making power for the woman in your life. You're not going to accept any of her nitpicking. You are going to relegate her to the domain of child rearing and housekeeping, and that is it, and she will thank you for it because that's what we all really actually want deep down. Okay,
But isn't that
it
true?
It's not true. Gosh, I know. I really need to get back in that kitchen. Dang it. I mean, yeah, that's the thing is like they just really want that to be the truth. And so that's what was so interesting where Tucker Carlson was like, I can't believe that there are real feminists in the real world. I don't think they exist. It's like, oh, you're trying to construct a completely alternate universe to the one that you're actually living in.
Yeah.
And you're hoping to like invite as many people as possible to come live in that alternate universe with you.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, they are identity politics ultimately. What Tucker Carlson and
Right.
Nick
This white
Fuentes are
grievance, this is
discussing,
male.
right? But even beyond that, they are creating through the guise of like biological necessity. They're talking about cultural. They're talking about a cultural idea that they wish to be biological, and in so doing, they are actually carrying out what they earlier in the discussion said it may be not so great, even though Nick Fuentes is like, no, this is fine. But Tucker is like, no, identity, we should, that's the superficiality of the political discussion. But in reality, that's
Right. Oh,
all,
yeah.
that's all they're talking about is
Right.
we need people to be in this way, this tradcath, weird, mythical way. And if they're
Mhm.
not, then they're crazy and everybody's into identity politics. But again,
Yeah.
they are playing that game.
So, Daniel, I have a question.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on this sort of like uneasy relationship between the sort of tradcasts and the Catholics versus the evangelicals? Because like they kind of, Nick represents the one and Tucker represents the other. And like, we've had a history in America of being like very anti-Catholic, not trusting of Catholics. But these sort of like tradcath type figures keep emerging of late, right?
Right. Well, you have I mean, this is no more emblematic than the relationship between Jack Posobiec and Charlie Kirk. Before Kirk died,
Mhm.
because they did we might do an episode on this, the Thought Crime podcast. They did 100 and something episodes before Kurt died, and
Oh,
that was
wow.
was Kurt going out there and doing the kind of more explicit all right stuff. That's kind of where I first got interested in Kurt, because he was really boring to me previously, and they kind of agree to disagree on that. It's like, well, look, I'm Catholic, you're not. We both kind of worship the same God, and as long as we're both fighting the left, then it's going to be, we're going to bygones and bygones. Like it's the division is not there. This is something that used to be a problem in U.S. politics up until really the moral majority era of the 80s. They really kind of the more integralist Catholics and the fundamentalist Christians started to well, as long as we're beating up on gay people and poor people and people of color, we're all gonna be fine. And then once they take control, once the fascist takeover happens and all the rest of us are fed into ovens, that's when they get to fight amongst themselves about that. But that kind of sectarianism, right now as a political project, they don't really disagree. You see that sometimes within the fringy right, where there's a little bit more fighting over that topic. You forgot the Orthodox side, which is the even more extreme stuff, where they're
Of course.
where more Catholic than the Catholics sort of thing. It's like
Right.
Mel Gibson's dad.
Yeah,
And-
all their
and all those
calendars are
people.
different and everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Hutton Gibson
Right,
appeared on that
Easter
same.
isn't on Easter; it's on a different day.
Hutton Gibson appeared on that same far right podcast that I mentioned that Pat Buchanan appeared on back in the day, which I was actually just listening to the most recent episode before we got on this call. So yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's all full circle.
Hutton Gibson, I mean, that's another figure worth researching for our audience. Super duper fucked up guy too.
Absolutely.
Traveling down to Australia to say that the Catholic Church made terrible mistakes in being better than they were in the 17th century. Who knows? Who knows?
Right.
Indeed.
And now we've got this woke American Pope just really messing things up for people.
But he's less woke than the last guy, so they're a little bit happier about that.
Right.
He's a little bit bit less woke, but he's American now,
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the first things that I noticed in the kind of wake of this was the reaction of the Heritage Foundation president.
I have not looked into this. I've not looked
he
into this, so
posted-
please, I'm looking forward to it. Please.
Disgraceful.
I'm just gonna play you his video where he talks about this.
Okay.
So hang on one second.
I'll have more to say on this in the coming days, but today I want to be clear about one thing. Christians can critique the state of Israel without being anti-Semitic. And of course, anti-Semitism should be condemned. My loyalty as a Christian and as an American is to Christ first and to America always. When it serves the interests of the United States to cooperate with Israel and other allies, we should do so, with partnerships on security, intelligence, and technology. But when it doesn't, conservatives should feel no obligation to reflexively support any foreign government, no matter how loud the pressure becomes from the globalist class or from their mouthpieces in Washington. The Heritage Foundation didn't become the intellectual backbone of the conservative movement by canceling our own people or policing the consciences of Christians. And we won't start.
I love globalist class.
And they're Washington back mouthpieces.
Yeah. I mean, tell me you're talking about the Jews. Tell me
Whoa, it's just
This
like,
is a game.
just
This is
under
a
the
game we
surface.
play. This is a game we play on this show. How
Yeah.
many ways can you say Jewish without saying Jewish?
Honestly, I mean, like the
Unbelievable.
phrase globalist class, like that should not be available to you as a dog whistle anymore because it is so clear what we are talking about here.
It's just
But
a
like, yeah,
whistle
he
at this point.
was essentially like, hey, everybody, please stop bitching about like the Nick and Tucker interview to me. I do not plan on disavowing any of them because I am precisely as anti-Semitic as they are. Like, right. And then there was this whole fallout after that where a bunch of people in the Heritage Foundation kind of like got a little squeaky, and they reached out to journalists and they were like, I didn't like that he did that. I thought that was really bad, actually. I was like, please don't do that. And he was like, screw you, I hate the Jews, and like did it. Right. So that's like that like really did cause some ripples. And so I find it so interesting that like all of this drama is unfolding now when Tucker Carlson has Nick Fuentes on his podcast, as opposed to when Donald Trump had Nick Fuentes over for dinner. Like, why wasn't all of this drama happening then? Why weren't people freaking out about that? What is that?
Well, no one really takes Trump seriously on that shit. I think that's really the
I
long
guess
and the short of it.
so.
Is he's Slick Willie. That was another president, but
Yeah.
he's just he can nothing sticks to it. Teflon Don, I guess that's the but nothing
Oh,
sticks
right.
to him.
Yeah.
He can just go and
No,
say
he's
whatever he wants.
he's like, I
doesn't
could
matter.
go shoot somebody point blank on Fifth Avenue, right? Blah, blah, blah. So like I guess that is just it, where like Donald Trump is not really a person who can be held to any standards. He is a meme president. This is the meme presidency. Like, so
Well,
that I found really interesting. I thought that like the New York Times and the Atlantic actually did okay on describing like the problems with the existence of this interview, where it was Michelle Goldberg for one and Ali Breland for the other one, and they both were just like, listen, that guy's like a straight up anti-Semite, and Tucker Carlson handled him with kid gloves and just let him be an anti-Semite in public with mostly just nodding along, right? And it's like, yeah, that does really suck. And they both pointed out like this looks like him being set into the place of the Charlie Kirk like successor, right? So instead of yelling about the New York Times and the Atlantic as I usually would do, I really feel robbed, right? I wanted to yell at them, but actually I feel like they did okay. So instead I'm going to yell about reason.com.
Another great thing to yell about. Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one.
Because if anybody is going to really shit the bed on this question, it's going to be them, right? So reason.com.
Robbie Suave.
Robbie.
Gotta love Robbie Suave.
Robbie Suave. I love this guy. He is absolutely laden down, no inch of free space with Fell for It Again awards. This man is the reigning champion of falling for it again. He was a campus culture war fall for it again guy. He was a trans panic fall for it again guy. And now here he is on the deplatforming Nick Fuentes won't stop anti-Semitism fall for it again platform, and he is ready to take first yet again, my friends. He is a champ. So I'm going actually point by point on this thing because it was so bad that there was not one single good sentence in the thing. So here we go.
Okay,
in his intro section, it is 5 paragraphs long. Paragraph 1, Nick Fuentes is a bad dude. Paragraph 2, Nick Fuentes is unfortunately famous. And he's like, listen, Kirk and Shapiro tried to sideline him and they got harassed by groypers so hard that they gave up and he continues to be famous. Paragraph 3, the effort to sideline him has failed. The evidence of which is that the Tucker interview of Fuentes had 16 million views on X.com, the everything app. Paragraph 4, young conservatives do not like it when the U.S. does stuff in the Middle East or funds Israel. You can critique that without being anti-Semitic, but Fuentes does not do that. He does it while being anti-Semitic. That is true, actually. He's right about that. So good job. Maybe there's one good.
Actually, no. No, he criticizes it. He does this because he's anti-Semitic first. He wouldn't care.
Right.
He very famously doesn't care about like U.S. outreach and U.S. imperialism abroad if it actually benefits. It's only when it's in favor of the Jews in his mind that he's not in favor of it. So
So he goes on to explain some of the fallout, which was like the National Review reviewed it poorly, saying the conversation was too friendly. Josh Hammer said he wants both Carlson and Fuentes blacklisted. Babylon Bee made fun of Tucker Carlson for being such a baby. And then paragraph 5, he says, but they are not succeeding. Like that side, the ones who are like, actually, this sucks. We don't want Nick Fuentes to be like our youth wing leader. They're not winning. Nick Fuentes is winning. Okay, that's his intro. He has 3 thoughts, which I think is generous. I don't think 3 is the number of thoughts Robbie Suave has. I think he has 0 to 0.5 thoughts in his head. But here are his 3 main points. Number 1, deplatforming Fuentes will not work. So he says, hey, listen, Fuentes uses social media to reach people. Like, you can't just be like, he can't come on my talk show, because he's just going to go on Rumble or whatever and do a video and everyone will watch it anyway. So here's his, this is my favorite. Here's the direct quote. Ready? Refusing to engage with Fuentes could make his arguments seem powerful, hypnotic, and ultimately more appealing. It appears as if opponents of Fuentes are afraid of a fair fight or lack the courage of their convictions. Younger conservative viewers might think some hidden or dangerous truth is being kept from them. In this way, deplatforming will backfire and guide the right toward the exact sort of conspiratorial thinking they are trying to stop. And this is where the analogy that I came up with was essentially like, banning antifreeze from your kitchen won't stop poisonings, and that's why you should put it in your water bottle, right? Like, what do you mean? Like, disavowing Fuentes will make the knowledge that he's sharing seem true and exciting and dangerous. Therefore, you should just let him say it on your show? I don't think so.
Well,
like, there's a difference.
We don't have to legitimize nonsense, right? Like, why do we have to have the smartest people in the world argue with people who aren't participating in good faith? Nick Fuentes isn't going to come out of a discussion and be like, you know what, guys, turns out I've been wrong for a whole bunch of time. No, this is just an exercise in expressing how he feels.
This is that classic cancel culture thing where they forget that you can talk about somebody. So they're like, well, you know, between the options of pretending he doesn't exist and inviting him on his show to share his views, like, which one would you pick? And it's like, neither. You can do neither. You can talk about these bad ideas in the same breath as which you are debunking them. You don't need to invite Nick on to do that.
I have a feeling some of us might have a little bit of experience in doing that.
Right. He's not coming on Half the Answer. We don't talk to the fascists. We talk about them. That is absolutely the line, right?
You would not believe the number of fascists in the early days who were like, no, just bring me on. I'll come on. We'll talk about this shit. Nope. We don't do that shit. Right. Nope. Not happening. I also like love this logic. Yeah. I love this logic of, you know, by bottling it, by not platforming Fuentes, we're making it like, well, does that logic work for Bernie Sanders to Reason.com? Yeah. Does that logic work for AOC, for Zoran Mamdani? Does that logic work? No, by not platforming a socialist, we're just making socialism seem, you know, more verboten. We're making it seem like like cooler than it actually is. It's like, I would love to see, you know, Bernie Sanders sit there and chat with Reason.com. I would be, I mean, you know, yeah. But of course, it only works enemies to the right. We're going to allow in the enemies to the right and not the enemies to the left. That's always the key. You know? You see this all the time.
And it's always sunlight is the best disinfectant for Nazi views, but not like the Green New Deal.
Before I was tracking Nazis, I was tracking religious right-wingers, and before I was doing that, I was tracking libertarians. So, you know, I have a long history of this stuff.
You've been here. So then he goes on to absolutely misunderstand the content of the interview. I don't know, maybe he didn't watch it actually or what, but he says, actually being deplatformed is what radicalized Fuentes. So he says, Fuentes admitted that his racist, anti-immigrant, and anti-Semitic views became more extreme over time, precisely because he was shut down by leading conservatives whenever he tried to raise more innocent questions about U.S. support for Israel. And so, like, I pulled that part of the interview for this, because I was like, that is simply not even what happened, right? Like, first of all, even if Fuentes had said, you know, Dave Rubin and Ben Shapiro wouldn't talk to me about Israel, and that's why I became a Nazi, like, that's one thing. that we could talk about, but that isn't even what he said, right? Because Tucker Carlson gave him that lead in. He tried to let him be the guy in the comic that's like shaving his head and getting a swastika tattoo, being like, I really hate to do this, but it's only because you guys are so mean to me, right?
Yeah.
That's the layup that Tucker thought he was delivering. And Nick Fuentes was like, absolutely not, son. I have a different idea. I have always been like this. So hang on, I'm just going to share that.
And I was in a much better place to withstand the pressure. But I do think and I want to, this is my main question to you, is when you get attacked, when people call you names, like they always called me racist, and I would always think to myself, I'm actually not. I would tell you if I was racist. I'm a little sexist, but I'm not racist. And I never understood why they did that. And then I thought, maybe the point is to make me racist. Where you just get to a point where you're like, well, if you're going to slander me, then I'll just become the thing you're calling me. I do think that's a feature of human nature, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
And if you stare too intently at the accusers, at the, whatever Ben Shapiro's or Mark Levin's or Ted Cruz or whoever it is calling you names, it like distorts you and you actually change and become what they say you are. Have you thought that ever? Do you worry that happened to you?
No, I don't think it ever did, because I know who I am. I had a very firm grounding of what I'm about, which is that
I'm the Nazi I was seeking. Yes.
Yep.
We go out into the world as children and we see that not everybody is white, and yet society continues to trundle along basically fine. like he didn't live that story, and so that's his like origin. Not that Ben Shapiro, Dave Rubin, Mark Levin, whoever didn't want to hang out with him at parties. That's just his own personal grievance.
Yeah.
And like they didn't want to hang out with him because of all the Nazi stuff.
And I mean, like, he was recording from his parents' basement for a while. I mean, that appears to be true. His parents were fully, I mean, presumably aware of like what he was doing. I mean, this is I mean,
everything I've read so far suggests so. Yeah, that they supported his project. Yeah.
I've known some people who
right, because if they didn't, they would have made him go outside.
Right.
Or
touch grass.
Maybe stop podcasting your Nazi shit from my basement, kid.
Right. Get the fuck out. Yeah.
Honestly. So yeah, that's just fake, right, Robbie? It's not. You can't just blame deplatforming for his belief system. His belief system is the way that it is because of the person that he is. So anyway, then my favorite part is this is his like, to be sure, but nevertheless moment where he's like, we don't necessarily need to take Fuentes' word for this. Of course, it is possible he secretly harbored awful prejudices all along. Like, yeah, obviously, but also not secretly, publicly. He publicly harbored those prejudices. In any case, he's achieved escape velocity. He's in conservative discourse now, and pretending he doesn't exist won't make him go away. Again, we don't have to have a 2-hour long conversation with him across a heavy wooden table in order to deal with him. Like, that's not how you do it. No. So that was point one. Point one was deplatforming him won't make him go away. And in fact, will make him worse. Point 2, debating Fuentes could work if it's done correctly. So here, Tucker was soft, but did push back on anti-Semitism. I don't think he did, right? He periodically was like, oh, not all Jews, right? Like you can, and also Christian Zionists are bad too, right? And like, you should be less mean to Joe Kent was also a part of it for some reason. Like, it just like wasn't.
I was like, hey, Joe Kent who? Am I supposed to remember who Joe Kent is at this point?
Yeah, I had to look
Sorry,
him up.
it's just one of those things. Yeah.
He does have a role now in the Trump administration, so I guess we do have to care who he is. But
I guess. All right, fair enough.
Anyway, Joe Kent was like an early mentor, I guess, of Fuentes, and then they had a falling out over Israel, I think. Anyway, it's always about Israel. So, but
or
like
about
that,
the black fringe.
yeah.
Right.
That entire section is simply just like make-em-ups. It's just like, well, I mean, if you just were like more tough on Fuentes, then it would actually work so great. And again, it's like you're presuming a good faith interlocutor. You're presuming somebody who will listen to your evidence and change their position once they've been proved wrong. But first of all, he's never going to do that. And second of all, Tucker Carlson already agrees with him. So that's not the guy that you need.
Yes.
If you want to like embarrass Nick Fuentes on the debate stage. He's not your man. Tucker Carlson does the Jedi mind trick on him and just gets him to repeat, right? Identity is real. Identity is real. Like, these are not the droids you're looking for. It was easy. It was so easy for him to just walk all over. He says, at several points, Carlson explained that both his Christian faith and conservative beliefs compelled him to reject the kind of identitarianism, collectivism, and racism that Fuentes regularly practices. He correctly articulated the position that one can and should and must oppose Israel's slaughters of innocent Gazans without blaming it on the Jews as a people. Like, yeah, almost. He almost did do that. And then he immediately took a 180 or just sat quietly while Nick Fuentes was like, but the Jews are indoctrinated basically from birth to be genocide loving freaks. So and they control every institution, and so they're forcing us all to support the genocide because of how they are raised to be evil and also to run the world. And Tucker's like, wow. Anyway, Marjorie Taylor Greene, like, truly, we are just like, what do you mean? He says podcasters should not avoid Fuentes, but if they talk to him, they should actually grill him on the things he has said. For instance, when Carlson interviewed Cruz, he challenged the senator to state the population of Iran, the country that Cruz fervently desired for the U.S. to attack. Cruz's failure to even ballpark the number made it look like he didn't know what he was talking about. Apply this technique to Fuentes, too. I mean, he would have if he'd wanted to, right? Like, he absolutely would have.
And using that example, is like such a, like, what's the population of Iran? And you can't bomb, you can't want to bomb Iran without knowing how many people live in Iran. I mean, seems like a non sequitur to me. I mean, it's just such a like lazy rhetorical trick. I mean, look, I do not think we should bomb Iran. I don't think that. Not knowing the population of Iran is a good thing, but I don't think these two things really go together. It's like,
right. Well, yeah. And a major difference.
What's the chemical composition of formaldehyde? Therefore, you can't want to bomb Iran.
I don't know.
It seems like,
Right. It seems to me that Robbie's idea here is that if you can make him seem flustered and uninformed, that like you can win, right? But the problem here is that Ted Cruz is extremely easy to fluster. It's actually so easy to get him to go and like sound like a dummy. Whereas Nick Fuentes has years and years of practice of just saying some nonsense with enough confidence that it'll feel like he didn't actually lose after all. That's kind of the point. That's part of why you don't platform Nick Fuentes, is that like that technique is not available.
And it's,
that was.
And it's why you don't partner with people who do not practice discussion in good faith. Because granted, he's never going, I mean, you're asking him to do the one thing that his livelihood counts on him not doing. right?
Yeah.
It's incredibly disingenuous and also like very naive. And the fact
Yes.
that like this gets bandied around by like pundits and alleged intellectuals all the time is embarrassing for them, because this is all so transparently a grift. And you being like, well, if we just go do that to one of your family members, okay? Go grill them with
Right.
all the information and see if they change their mind, and then come back and we'll chat, okay?
Yeah,
Thanksgiving is coming
absolutely.
up.
Right. Right.
Well,
Try
yeah,
it
this is
there.
where the Felford Award really comes into play, because it's like, oh, actually debunking Nick Fuentes would be so easy if you simply told him that you expect him to only say true things. Like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, if we were transported to the fairy tale land where nobody can ever lie, then yeah, I guess it would be awesome to interview Nick Fuentes. But like, that's not where we live.
And this is bad advice for Tucker Carlson, because Carlson believes 90% of the things that Fuentes does. It's just a complete misunderstanding of what the conversation was even about. It's like pretending these guys stand on two separate sides of some issue, when no, the whole point,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously with a modicum of media literacy, of not being like punched in the head with a hammer or hit in the face by a horse, and waking up and knowing something about the political reality of the United States in the year 2025, and watching this and going like, well, clearly, I don't know. I speak English and I speak it, and I am above the age of 10. I understand what's going on in this clip.
Right.
But then
I
again,
can
I am
see
not
what this
paid
is.
not to understand. Yes. So
Right.
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 Which, yeah, Robbie truly is, I think. I hope he's getting paid a lot, because he's really understanding things
Nothing.
at a 0% rate. Yeah, I hope it's worth it, because this is
Can-
so embarrassing. Like, he is just stepping on rakes left and right in public.
Can you imagine if there was this much money on the left, on even like the moderate
Oh
left?
my God.
Can
I
you
would
imagine?
be so rich.
I'd have a
I would
blackout
just
curtain.
constantly, yeah, right? I'd be cocking my head to the side and my voice would be going up all the time. I'd be pretending to not understand so many things. It would be so fun. But no, here I am reading quotes instead. And playing clips. So yeah, I mean, this whole idea that like Tucker Carlson simply failed to apply the techniques that we know to be in his wheelhouse to this person is like, go the next step forward. Think about why that is. Was it that he didn't get a good night of sleep last night? No, it is that he simply chose not to apply those techniques, and that those techniques don't apply to Nick. Like, you can't, it's one or both of those. Like, you can't. It's not just like, oh, just do it. Just next time, do it. Like, that doesn't work. Okay, I promised 3 points. Those were 1 and 2. Point 3 is opponents of anti-Semitism should want to minimize the Israel issue. So,
well, you see, the things that Israel is doing are so bad, you're just going to automatically be anti-Semitic.
Daniel, I'm so tired.
You understand?
Yeah.
You understand, this is where I live all the time, right? You understand?
Right.
Right. This is your block.
I don't
We're
have
just visiting.
the immunity built up. So, and then this is one of my favorite, like, I'm not a real journalist moves, which is where he posted his own tweet as part of the argument, where he's like, well, actually, everybody yelled at me about this take that I had. Let me tell you what it was. And so basically, there was a post by Charles Fain Lehman, who said, perhaps an unpopular opinion, but reducing Nick Fuentes' influence starts with prosecuting Pornhub. Because they were like, well, he wouldn't have that argument that like that's correct about how porn is evil and everyone who does it should be in jail if we just did that, if we just did his policy proposal.
I completely
and so then
skipped
Robbie,
the porn conversation. I completely skipped the porn conversation.
Dude.
That's, I could go on.
But they
for this.
literally
Anyway,
were
yes.
like, anyone who's ever done porn should be in prison. That's what they said,
Yes.
right? And
No,
so
right,
that That's wild. And so then like this guy's like, well, obviously if we just did that, then nobody would listen to Nick Fuentes anymore. Like what? So then Robbie
if we give Nick Fuentes what he wants policy wise, he will become less powerful. Don't you see?
Right.
You
Don't
cave
you
to his
understand?
demands, and then he
Once
goes
we
away.
vindicate him, then he'll have no power here. So yeah, that was bad enough. And then Robbie quote tweeted that to be like, oh, I mean, perhaps an even more unpopular opinion, but the most obvious way to reduce the influence of Nick Fuentes would be to end U.S. military aid to Israel. And it's like, that's not the reason to do it, first of all, right? To be like, I know, let's do what the anti-Semite wants, as opposed to being like, let's stop funding a genocide, right? So
funding a genocide makes us look bad because the anti-Semites look like they're correct.
Right. Like, that just skips 100 steps of where like a normal person's brain would take things, right? To be like, oh, are young people getting swayed to the alt-right or the far right or the Nazis or the Groypers or whatever because those are the only people on the right who are like saying that Israel is doing something evil? Like, oh, then we should have more options on the right of attitudes towards Israel. First of all, those already exist. Secondly, it's not because we would like to see a right wing that is more palatable because it has a good attitude towards genocide. It is that the left is correct about Israel. Like, right? It's not that like we need a right that is more morally correct on the question of Israel, because they will continue to be morally completely fucked on every other issue. That's not the desired outcome of this world.
No.
So like this is again that whole thing of like, I just really want to see a robust Republican Party that operates above board and is good and strong, so that we have like something to be a good like friendly and civilized opposition towards. No, I want to see them crushed. I'm sorry. They should not have power. They make people's lives worse. Anytime the right gets into power, things get worse. So let's not let that happen. Rather than giving them advice for like how to be more appealing to young people, how about we just stop letting them be?
But of course, Reason.com and Robbie Suave are not really in opposition to, the right wing, as much as the libertarians pretend like, oh, we're kind of, we're like 50-50. We're right here in the middle. We're just, we don't really exist on that spectrum. It's like, no, you guys are right wing. You're perfectly willing to like make common cause with anti-Semites so long as your taxes get cut. Like, fuck off,
No, absolutely.
Right.
And Caitlin, to your point, like this whole desire for like a friendlier, kinder Republican Party, it actually is the other side of the Republicans are right about everything. They just need to do it nicer, and that's what we'll do. Right. So it's actually the same coin, just different sides. We need a better, nicer Republican Party because also we believe that Republicans are right insofar as the ideas. We just need to soften the tone.
Because then we can finally get back to making bipartisan legislation that makes the Republicans and the Democrats happy, by which we mean making the Americans worse off. Like, that is truly what it is. So here's how the whole article ends. It says, but Fuentes-ism is spreading and winning, in part because Israel's standing with conservatives, in particular young conservatives, is falling. Everyone who aspires to swiftly stem the rising tide of anti-Semitism should hope for the decreased salience of Israel's wars as a focus of political discussion. Now, what's funny about that is it's only a conclusion to point 3. It's not a conclusion to the whole essay. Robbie simply did not write a conclusion to the whole essay, and I just think that's important to note. I don't know. That's just a lazy man.
He had a word count. And then just
he was like, anyway, I think that's enough, right? It was more important to get it out quick than to get it out good, right?
It's like all those cheap paperbacks I read when I was young that ended on page 201. Like literally, they hit the
Yeah.
200 pages, and then they all lived happily ever after. I'm done. Yes.
Yeah. And then, oh yeah, that guy that we haven't heard about since the climax, he showed up and everyone was like, yay, it's you. Anyway, bye.
Yes, exactly.
Yes,
Yeah,
fantastic
so
writing always.
that is reason.com. I'm so glad it was written by a man, because obviously if a woman had written it, she would have used her heart and her womb instead of her brain, and it wouldn't have come out so good. So thank you,
no,
Robbie,
clearly.
for taking that one for us. But yeah, like this whole thing is such a mess, because it is taking this idea that like, oh, well, Fuentes is very famous already, so we can't really just like pretend he doesn't exist. Oh, well, anti-Semitism exists because Israel is so evil, and so that's why like we have to make sure that we're able to present a right wing that's willing to admit that Israel is actually super duper evil. And it doesn't acknowledge the fact that like Nick Fuentes was only able to get where he is because of the sickness inside of the right wing, right? It's not that like adopting some of his views and like defanging him and making him look silly on the internet is going to fix everything, because he is a symptom of a problem, and that problem will still exist no matter what. I don't know. To me, that just feels like so elemental. Like, why are we doing this? Why are we acting this way? Why are we being silly babies?
I mean, because it's ultimately part of the same political project, and it's like ultimately they agree whether they disagree. I mean, I don't know, like right wing dipshit, supports other right wing dipshit. Film at 11. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
It's so garbage. Anyway,
And
I don't know. I didn't have
disagree. And to the degree they disagree, it's an intramural argument. They're arguing amongst themselves about who gets to take the reins of this political project. The three of us are not involved in that conversation. Nothing that we say has anything to. All we can do is document it to people and going like, "This is what's happening. This is what you need. This is what you need to understand." It's like these guys are. We are not part of that coalition.
Yeah.
Right. And like
Absolutely.
It is very disturbing that people with overtly Nazi flavored views, who even cite like actual historic Nazis as their influences in their thinking, are able to get this sort of mainstream attention and are able to make a convincing play for the sort of face of the youth Republican vote. That's extremely disturbing. And it is something that we need to know about so that we can be fighting it. And also just like understand how thin the wall is between some of these activists that we maybe laugh at because like their ideologies are so silly, and like a truck coming down the street at you. Like we do need to be prepared for the fact that like they don't really have a lot of barriers before they go for violence. Violence is very much in their lexicon. It's very much in their toolbox. It's scary, but it's true. I guess that's I don't have much of a conclusion. Much like Robbie, I didn't write a conclusion for this.
Well, and right now they're in control of the apparatus of the state. I mean, this isn't just somebody like running you down with their car because they're racist. It's the entire ICE enforcement regimen is ultimately doing this. This is this is not it's bigger than that. I mean, it's I mean, and we pretend like, well, someone breaking a Starbucks window is committing political violence, but rounding up brown people in Chicago is not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The state's violence against its people is always political violence, and it should be counted as such. And we have a situation in Portland, for example, where there are far right online influencers who have been up to the roof of the ICE building. They've been invited up there to film content and take selfies. And that is a real indication of where we're at as a country. The Nazis have entered the building. The Groypers are occupying the government. Like we're there. Chris Rufo was the one who was like, Rufo occupied government, like because he got to go inside of the Department of Education, which is in itself a Nazi meme, right? That's a riff on Zionist occupied government. Like it's all like right there on the surface for us to enjoy and make kind of a sickly face at, because it is so sick. Yeah. So, do you have any thoughts about like, I don't know, something people should know, something people can do, something that will help us to like move forward without wanting to drown our faces in a bowl of soup? Like, what do we have?
Is that
Are you
directed
not
to?
the guy to ask?
Well, I mean, the truth is, I mean, I have look. The answer I always give to this question is, you live in a community and you know what people in your community need. This
Hmm.
does not have to be. I don't speak German is a little bit less electorally focused than other podcasts of its ilk. I don't believe that
Yeah.
the solution to this ultimately lies in electoral politics. I think the problem is deeper than that. But like my answer to this question is always, anti-fascism is not about like going and breaking windows. It's not about like necessarily protesting ICE. It's not even necessarily about doxing or all that. It's the a lot of it is about education. It's about like sharing this with other people who maybe don't know about this stuff, explaining these things to your friends and neighbors who maybe are not up into this as they are. More to the point, I mean, winter is coming. There's somebody living on the streets who needs your help. Somebody needs food. Somebody needs money. Somebody needs support. Solving those kinds of problems, like making those problems less overt, like really like helping people, you're always going to feel better doing that. And it is like
That's so
deliberately,
true.
it is part of that project. Maybe there's a food not bombs where you live. Maybe there's
Mhm.
a library, a funding drive. There's a church that's taking donations. A good church, not a bad church. As we understand. But you know your community better than I do. I don't know what's going on in your community. 5 minutes a
Yeah.
day, an hour a week, 2 hours a week. Every little bit can be helpful.
Figure something out.
I,
Yeah.
there are immigrants in your community. Do they need something?
Hmm.
Do they need support? And you have your set of skills, and ultimately it starts small. Every little thing is something that starts small. You know, teach a
Yeah.
child to read, teach a child algebra. I mean, there are all kinds of things. I mean, it
Right.
can, and it's ultimately community based. It has to be locally based, though. If you're
Yeah.
thinking in terms of
Right.
Donald Trump, then you're not thinking on the right. My beat is I track these guys in their propaganda and I explain it to other people, and I am very happy to do that. People have tried to do that. People have tried to like help me out, and it's like, no, I can't look at that. I'm done. That's a
Right.
that's a massive screaming skulls. It's like it's okay. That's what I do. But
There's two nice things happening in my area. One is that like we understand that a lot of immigrants are afraid to go out too much right now. They're, concerned about where we in the Portland area are getting hit really hard with the ice raids. And so there are meal trains actually that have been organized to help get those people their groceries, and make sure that they're not, stuck in their homes with no food. So the meal trains are nice. The other thing, hang on. It's cool. The other thing, actually, in my neighborhood is that we had a coat drive because winter is coming, and they got so many coats that actually they need another coat rack. Like they're like, does anyone have an extra coat rack? Because so many people donated coats to help people keep people warm. And I haven't even done mine yet. Like I have to go do that later today because my kids keep growing out of coats, and then I can just they're like perfectly serviceable coats, so then I hand them off.
yeah,
But yeah, the community sort of drive is real. People are doing it. We come together, we help each other, we are helpful humans. It's great.
yeah. And it may sound like that's not much in comparison to these like national and international events and the growth of anti-Semitism, et cetera, et cetera. But all of us are only one person, and ultimately all you can do is what
Mhm.
you can do in your day. And to think of this, there it's a cliche, but think global, act local is it's a cliche for a reason. I think there's a real truth to that.
Some
I'll
cliches are
go
true.
I'll go even more micro, Daniel, because I loved it so much. But like I say to Caitlin all the time, like if we walked outside, of each individual who walked outside every day, like picked up a few pieces of trash or recycling, like what a cleaner world we'd have if everybody like held the door open and said like hi and thank you and like how are you today? Like these are things that make a difference, that
Yeah,
make a person's life better. And if each of us did those things, we might all come home happier than we often do. And
agree.
this is
Absolutely.
how we make a better world.
All right. So touch grass, help a friend in need, donate things that you can donate. That's good. That's actionable. Thank you, Daniel.
Oh, and also overthrow capitalism. That's that's.
Oh, right. Also that. Okay, bye, everybody. This has been Half the Answer. This is Half the Answer. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Half the Answer, presented by Liberal Currents. You can find Half the Answer anywhere you get your podcasts. Liberal Currents is an entirely listener and subscriber-funded publication, which includes programs like Half the Answer and Neon Liberalism. So, if you like what you've heard and wish to contribute, you may do so at liberalcurrents.com and through Patreon. And remember, understanding a question is half the answer.